kind of leave that side of the business and go out on my own. I started Ashley Bright Presents with the goal of giving everyone the tools to take their ideas and share them so they inspire action and get the results they want. Okay, and I love what I do. So we've already met the kids. But I love questions. I'm used to it. Any parent has dealt with lots of those questions, those big, huge questions, the philosophical questions you can't figure out how to provide the right answer. But I love doing it, and so I say that because I want you to ask questions throughout this. Okay, this isn't about me blabbing on. This is about me providing value. And so if there's something you need clarification on, speak up and ask me questions. All right, so these are the things we're going to talk about today. I'm kind of touching, we can go deep on a lot of stuff, but I'm trying to touch on a range of things. I think all of these are valuable and they're going to play a role in what you're doing. So we're going to talk about pitch structure. This varies quite a bit, but it kind of just gives you some nuts and bolts to think about. Stories. You know, here's stories. We're going to talk about how to make those engaging, what that means in a pitch. Data. We love numbers. Numbers are powerful. Financials, research, evidence. But it's not really very powerful unless you can give it meaning to your audience. Imagery, pictures worth 1,000 words. Talk a little bit about that. And then preparing your slides. What to do with layout, how to clean that up, how to build clarity. And then last but not least, taking the stage, getting in front of everyone, dealing with whatever that may be. Stress, nervousness, excitement, whatever. And we'll help you work on that. Or give you some techniques to help you work on that. Sound good? Mm-hmm. Any questions before we jump in? What's going on over there? There's whispering. I'm in trouble.
He asked me earlier for a Starbucks juice on water bottle, and I said, we don't just give those out for drinks. We only have a limited selection of those. We have free drinks at there.
I brought this from home.
Nice.
Okay, I'm filling out the survey right now.
I wanted the speaker to be branded.
In fact, he said that I actually had to hold it like this.
But the camera is right here.
Okay, so let's talk pitch. Of a pitch structure.
Kind of like Greg Teasdale's was. Or Tony's.
I didn't see that, but I'll go with it.
Isn't it kind of like overview? We're going to talk about, I don't know, just like a basic presentation is what we're going to talk about, and then how we're going to talk about it, and then we get into the story and talk about it, and then we conclude and like tell them that's what we talked about.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyone else?
Start with the problem or the pain.
Mm-hmm. Are you allowed to participate?
I don't know about that. That's what it is. The problem is just get somebody inspired and excited and then tell them what to do with that.
Yeah. And so I said there's no real sort of silver bullet to this, but I think that the elements that are here are going to play a big role in any pitch, any presentation. So in that opening, you're going to have obviously a beginning, a middle, and an end. And there's different ways to think about it. Some people are like, tell them what you're going to talk about, tell them what you're talking about, tell them what you did talk about. There's different, everyone's going to have a slightly different philosophy, but I think the opening is the most important piece of this. Okay, you may have 30 seconds, you may have a minute if you're lucky, but what you want to do in that is you want to hook them. Something that grabs their attention, gets them paying attention to you and listening. In that, you're going to wrap in what's the problem? What's the problem we're trying to solve here and why it matters? Who does it matter to? Okay, if I'm talking about something that isn't necessarily relevant to all of this audience, I need to figure out a way to make you think about it and understand why it matters. And then the last piece, and this is a critical piece, is demonstrating your credibility and your skill set to be the one to solve this problem. Okay, so when I say opening hook, I'm thinking some sort of story, testimonial, quote, personal experience, something that pulls people in, introduces the problem, talks about why it matters, and why you are uniquely suited to solve this problem. So in that first 30 seconds, that first minute, they've got a sense of where you're going with it, who you are. I've talked to a couple investors, a couple of VCs that they say, quite frankly, I don't give a shit about the deck. I don't even look at the deck. I want that relationship, and I get it in the first 30 seconds. I've sat in on these discussions, and like some of them are cold-blooded. You know, they go in, it's no, no, no from the beginning. So you got to break that down so you can turn it into a yes. All right. So the middle piece, now you're kind of building on what you've already set up. They have this understanding of why this matters, what the problem is, who you are. Now this is sort of the meat of it. Now you're sort of restating the problem, expanding on it, talking about the data that supports it. Here's the evidence for why this problem exists and how, what the issues are. And then start to introduce your solution. Again, what's the benefit that your solution is going to offer? How do you back that up? Have you got any anecdotal evidence? Have you done research? Have you got customer surveys? Have you got traction in the market that you can reference? And then again, kind of like the opening, how are you going to do it? So it's all great. We know the problem. Your solution sounds really interesting and effective. But how are you going to solve it? What's your team? What's the process? Go to market? All those other things. Okay, so this is the meat of it. This is what's going to back up what you just told them here. And then lastly, when you end it, you're going to try and hook into what you talked about in the beginning. You're going to restate the problem, the solution. There may be an ask. Sometimes I've been in situations where they're literally asking for, hey, here's what we need from you. We need connections to these types of people. We need financial support. We need this technical knowledge. Okay, and then a strong close. And I like to try and reference if there's a way to bring in what you talked about in the beginning. If you're highlighting an individual, a company, a community, a way to kind of close that loop. Because people want to see closure. It's the reason why when you're stuck in traffic on the freeway and you see something going on up ahead, an accident, we're all rubbernecking because we want to know what happened. We want closure. We want to see what's going on. It's human nature. Go ahead.
And discussions actually for all three of you. Throughout this whole course, we always talk about the 7-minute presentations. Is there a reason? I know we're going to give 7 minutes, but is there a specific reason why we'll always talk about 7 minutes? Is that like an industry thing?
It's not a specific 7 thing. It's 5 minutes. There's a 10-second pitch. There's a 1-minute pitch. There's an intermediate length, 5 to 8 minute, maybe 10-minute pitch. There's a 20-minute version. There's an hour-long version.
I think it varies. I think
Context.
if you're going out and doing this on a regular basis, you're going out to pitch and present. I think you need to be ready to do that short version. What can you say in 30 seconds to a minute? 3 minutes, sometimes without any props or slides or visuals. And then I think it goes to 7 minutes and then 10 minutes. Those are kind of the formats I've seen. If you're lucky enough to get longer, great. But that's usually what I see.
And they're typically trying to cram a bunch of presentations into a certain time period, which is why they're shorter.
Yeah, I mean, the last 3 days I was up in Phoenix at Venture Madness. They had 16 companies presenting, and they basically got, I think it was 7 minutes to do their, I think it was 7 minutes to do their actual pitch, and then there were 5 minutes for questions from the judges, and then it was like a bracket. So the people that then made it through the next round came back, and then they got actually longer. I think they got 10 minutes, and there were 10 minutes of questions. And then the ones that made it through that, there were 2 left. They came back, and they actually didn't present at all. They spent 10 minutes actually 20 minutes answering questions from the audience and from the judges. So I don't know that there's a set format, but I think that you should plan on short, medium, and then a longer format version.
But also, just the reality of dealing with a lot of people you're pitching to is that they might give you a half an hour. They're probably going to be 15 minutes with a hard stop. They might give you half an hour, right? In which case, by the time you get in and you get set up and you greet everybody and somebody runs it late, you're 10 or 12 minutes in, they got 20 minutes of questions and you're out. That's,
Yeah, if you're lucky.
yeah, you're more likely to get a 15-minute hard stop. Right?
Or or they might, you get that first minute. If you haven't hooked them, the important people leave the room, and the rest of them sort of are there. I'm coming fresh off of hearing this just last week from there was a whole room of founders in there of startups, and this guy was just, I think, sort of raining pain and kind of just letting them know how things actually work. So, all right, any questions on that? There's a lot of stuff in there, and like I said, there's no silver bullet. It's just I think this is the critical piece is that opening. How are you going to wrap it all together? All right. So engaging your audience. Any thoughts on how we do that?
Give them money. I've actually passed out their cards during presentations.
You were trying to get money from them.
No, I played a game.
Oh, okay, okay. Anyone else?
Be fun.
Be funny.
Funny, yeah.
I didn't hear what other people said, but.
Stories, be funny, give out gift cards.
Yeah, buying attention.
Money, yeah. Yeah, buy favor with people.
Enthusiasm.
Enthusiasm, yeah.
Was it?
Try to be relatable, give something that the
Yeah.
audience can relate to and grab onto, at least some percentage of them.
Yep.
You know, so they can
Yeah.
identify with whatever the pain or problem is, even if they haven't personally had it.
Yeah, there's another component which I'm not going to cover in detail here, but it's around that planning, understanding who your audience is.
Right.
Where is their mind at? They're
What was-
interested in learning. Sorry?
What was that?
Oh, I said do homework on it so you can hook them with something that you can do.
Yeah, know your audience is
Yeah, I think do the research, know your audience, because this is not about you, it's about them. Okay, you want to engage with them. Okay, so know your audience, and so that is a whole other piece of this. Researching and finding out how the points you're going to talk about align with where they're at and building that relevance. What I want to talk about in this context is stories. And we're all, when we think about sort of our day-to-day, we're all creatures of narrative. I mean, the only reason any of us are here is because somewhere back thousands and millions of years ago, someone was able to tell stories around the campfire so that we all survived. Okay, we knew what to eat, what not to eat, what was going to kill us, how to survive. Okay, so stories play a critical role in our survival. Basic structure, I kind of referenced that whole car accident on the freeway kind of a thing. I mean, basic story, there's a situation, there's some sort of complication, and then we as human beings want resolution. What's the resolution of this? Okay. Now, when we think about pitches or presentations, I mean, I think we know there's obviously a story structure with literature, with movies, with theater. But when we think about pitches and presentations, they often default to a report. Are you able to see that?
Kind of, sort of not. I'm gonna end up moving. You're fine. You're fine. You're the teacher. Come on.
So presentations and pitches. There is a structure. There's a woman named Nancy Duarte who has been doing this for 25 years, and she basically researched this. She was curious, why are so many presentations and pitches just, they're not engaging, they're boring, they're terrible. What's going on here? There has to be some sort of structure. So she did a lot of research, and what this is just one of the pieces that she was talking about. This is Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech. And what she did was looked at kind of the negative or status quo things that he was talking about, and the more aspirational, positive. Started looking at the language. This is representative. Other famous speeches, where they're talking about Gettysburg Address, or you're talking about Steve Jobs, or whatever it is. She started looking at this and seeing the same pattern.
What was her name?
Her name was Nancy Duarte.
That was a TED Talk, wasn't it?
It was a TED Talk.
I saw that. It was really good.
Yeah. So what you're doing when you think about a pitch or a presentation, you're persuading people. So you're kind of introducing something that is a change for them. It could be beneficial, but again, put yourself in their mindset. You're presenting a new product, new service that's going to benefit, make their business more efficient. That's great. But they may be thinking about, okay, I'm going to have to retool, I'm going to have downtime, I'm going to have to hire a couple of assistants, I'm going to have to do all these things. So they're thinking about these things because it's change. And what happens when there's change? You get resistance. Okay, it may not be direct and confrontational, it may just be in the back of their mind, but it's resistance to your idea, it's resistance to adoption. Okay, so that pattern I talked about, it's similar to, I know we're in the middle of the desert. Anyone a sailor?
Not like
Sailed
that.
before? Well, this is how we all envision. This is how I envision the way I
Sunfish.
But when you're sailing, you can't sail directly into the wind, right? But you need to get there, and so you have to tap. You go back and forth, and you're using the resistance and the power of the wind to move yourself forward. That's essentially what you're doing in a presentation. Okay, you are working, you have a goal in mind. This product is going to revolutionize your business, but I need to get you there. I can't just go right there. Okay, so you need to break down that resistance. And so that's, now if we look at that pattern, that's what's going on here. So this is where we are, walking into the room, status quo.
The new utopia.
This is where I want you to be, whatever that is. okay, my business, my product, my service is going to transform the way you work, you live, your employees, your revenue, whatever that is. But I can't take you right there. So what I'm going to do is, along the way, I'm going to do this up and down, up and down, up and down. So positive, resistance, positive. And what you're doing is you're assessing their questions. What are the things they're thinking about? This is too expensive. This is too complicated. My salespeople won't adopt this. Okay, you got to think about what are the things that they're going to be thinking in their head while you're pitching to them. So example, this is whiteboard in the office. This was sort of the beginnings of this deck we're going through now a while back. And what I was doing was looking, each color represents something. Blue is positive, red is negative. So remember the up and down? So what I'm doing is I'm looking, if I got this rhythm going on, positive, negative, positive, positive, negative. Okay, so it's something to start thinking about. That's why I love working with post-it notes, because it allows you that flexibility. The moment we get into PowerPoint, it starts, I think, limiting the ability to flexibility. Okay?
Wait, so you did this before you built your deck? I mean, that's
Correct, correct.
Before you built this deck.
Before I built the deck that we're looking at now. So even in a workshop in a longer format, because I do this as a 3-hour, I do this as a 20-minute, I do this as a 30-minute. But the point is that whole up and down, positive, negative, I'm anticipating questions. I'm anticipating possible resistance. I'm also showing contrast, which is really critical. Because again, you're showing the way things are, where I want them to be. Where you are as a person or a business, and where I want you to be with my product or service. Okay, so I'm starting to think about that. There's also an engagement and entertainment quality to this. Okay, this is what, if you look at films, this is what keeps us on the edge of our seat. Because there is that dynamic, that contrast, that good, bad, that high energy, low energy. Okay, that's what's going on. And what you're doing is you're breaking down the obstacles for adoption of your idea. Because again, if I just come in and I'm like, hey, this is the greatest thing ever, and you need to do it. Whoa, wait a minute. I don't know who you are. I don't know if I think this is going to work for me. You need to sell me. You need to convince me. And so that's what you do with this tag. Okay. This individual, he founded the Equal Justice Project. And in his TED Talk, they estimated he raised $15 million in 18 minutes just by telling stories. He had no slides, he had no visuals, he had no props. He was just telling stories about the people in his life that he interacts with and how his program helps them.
What's his name? I just want to go with it.
Hold on.
So what was the name of the company?
Brian Stevens.
Right.
Didn't he build a center? He was part of TED this year.
Pardon?
I think he spoke at TED again this year.
It's entirely possible, yeah.
He is building a center in Alabama, I think.
Like a $15 million. So. He can do a lot of things with that.
He's like the most popular speaker ever.
He's one of them, yeah. And if you, I recommend everyone go look at it or go watch his talk. Because it was really about him. It was about the relationships, his background, how his upbringing led to the role he's got now, how this gave him compassion for the people he serves, the way his services are benefiting them, and the way it's transforming lives. Pretty powerful stuff. So don't dismiss that. Even when you've got 3 minutes. I mean, the pitches I saw at Venture Madness the other day, there were all these opportunities to hook people and get a story and make it compelling. Some people did, some people didn't.
I think oftentimes people leave the story out and just get down to the business, like trained.
And that's definitely, there is a tug there. There's the sort of the more analytical, give me the numbers, give me the details, I don't have time to deal with the rest of it. And that may be something you have to do. But I think there's always an opportunity to set context. It doesn't have to take 3 minutes to set context. You can do it in 30 seconds. You can do it in 2 sentences. Okay, so just think about that and don't dismiss it, because when you go in there, I mean, VCs, they might see 20 pitches a day, maybe more. And so everyone that's going in there is going to have good numbers, a business plan, a solid market. They wouldn't have made it to that point if they didn't. So what you're looking for is how to differentiate yourself. And I think story, personality, engagement, those are the way you do it.
I was just going to say, you're going to hear from, I mean, you already heard from Greg, or you saw the basic PowerPoint pitch deck. And
Greg is a by the numbers.
Yeah, I mean, that's his style. He's never really gonna ever do this. He might implement it in moments, unintentionally, but because he's, got passion for something in a moment. But he's not going to plan this. He's not going to, practice this. You don't have to do that either. Right? At the end of the day, you're going to present the way you can as a human. Right? You can practice these things. You're going to bring your own authentic voice to whatever you do. But you can drop in elements of this style in any model. Greg could, and he will occasionally. It's better to be intentional and then recognize the audience you're presenting to. Not everything is a TED Talk, right? The audience that we're presenting to probably needs it to be a little more TED than analytical, because you're not going in to raise funds. When you go do that, you can add TED to the here's what is I need out of this. Here's the details.
Well, as I said, the VC that I saw talk a couple weeks ago at Startup Week, Phoenix Startup Week, he said, I know in the first 30 seconds whether I want to keep listening. And so that is, hook them with the story, what's the problem, and why I'm here, why I'm the right person to solve it. I heard one the other day, actually, and it opened with, when I opened my eyes in prison in 2007.
Wow.
Everyone stood up. Right. Like, what's that, 5 words, 4 words, something like that. And everyone was hooked. So you can do it succinctly and briefly, but try and remember to do that. All right, so giving data meaning. We talked about numbers, how critical numbers are, but how do you give them meaning? Well, I'm way over time here, so we may have to rush through this, but let me keep going. Okay.
Next section was to work our slides, so I'd rather get this.
Okay. All right. So, as I said, numbers are great, but it's all about the human connection here. Okay. How are people benefiting from this? How is what I'm doing serving a community, and how do those numbers mean something? Okay. Because what you're going to do, it's all about giving them a reason to care, looking for a way to stand out, looking for a way to hook them, looking for a way to get them interested. Okay.
I want to say something on that. I was in it was like I don't know, it was a sales pitch at the TCC years ago, and I think it was the BNI had encouraged everybody to go. It was packed. I mean, this whole thing was packed, and they were trying to sell you on this investment thing.
Yes, I was there.
I didn't fall for it, but I mean, after this guy got done pitching, I mean, people just swarmed down there to get this program. And the one thing I do remember about this thing is that basically it was this way to invest, and it showed
investment software.
It showed these arrows. Like if all the arrows were green, invest, buy, and if they were all red, sell, and if they were only 2 green, nope. So but my point of it is they simplified it so much. It's is it 3 green arrows or 3 red?
Yeah.
And everybody related to it. I can invest.
So giving them a reason to care and being simple might be the reason to care.
And he also said, who are all the single moms in the room? And then went to the one sitting on the aisle and gave it to her for free. Do you remember that? In front of everybody. Save a single mom.
Yeah, so I mean, they're a perfect example. And so one of the things to understand with this is there's no silver bullets here. There's no right or wrong way necessarily, but there are things that you can do. There are things that are proven that if you can bring them in, you want to do that. So when we talk about numbers, you want to give your audience a reason to care, and simplicity might be that reason. Okay, so make it compelling, and this is red arrow, green arrow. Make it compelling. So case in point, how many people have seen slides that look something like this? It's just an eye chart of information. Okay, is it valuable to anyone? No, but. But as the presenter, if I know the audience, okay, and so I know what they're interested in. So I can, if this is what's important to them, extract that element. Okay, do something like this. Now it's kind of like the red arrow, green arrow. I immediately go, 12%, whatever. Okay, but suddenly it becomes compelling, interesting, meaningful. Another thing is make it relatable. I think we're all probably see this when we talk about social media stats, we talk about investment or business. I mean, the numbers are astronomical, billions, trillions. Okay, you got to bring it to a place where people can relate to it. Okay, beyond just, wow, that's a really big number. I don't know what to do with it. So, example, and this is Nokia, so this is an old stat. I assume Nokia is still around in some context, but not like this, because this is a while ago. But this was in Europe, and Nokia has 1.1 billion phones or devices in use. Okay, big number, right? But I don't know what to do with that as a consumer or someone carrying it. So they have these little vignettes that they created where they were sort of putting context to it. So for Europe, so at any given time, I mean, you think about it that way, you go, oh, I've been there, or I live there. I know what that, so it's breaking that number down and giving it context. So if you're talking about a national number, bring it down to the local level. So here's the national number, here's the state level, or state number, here's the number in Pima County. Okay, so it's starting to just sort of create that context for people. Another really important one is making it visual. And we talked about, I mean, I'm sure you've heard, just, pictures with 1,000 words. Okay, we respond more positively when it's visual, we get it. So case in point, has anyone ever heard about this? How much garbage and debris is up in space? From all the different missions, like bolts and whatever. So, you look at these numbers, 100 million pieces. Okay, they're like that big floating around in there. Now, if someone's talking to you in the context of like, hey, when we're launching a satellite, this is what we have to get through. Okay, it's a challenge, it's problematic, it's dangerous, it's risky, it's expensive.
Send a giant magnet up there.
Someone mapped all of the debris that's out there.
Wow, that's pretty.
Okay, so now someone
it's gonna make a
says,
new planet someday.
we're trying to launch a satellite through all that. Even something that big will rip a hole in the side of this thing and ruin a $50 million mission. Okay, so visual. Okay, so whenever possible, is there a way to represent it visually? Is there a way to get people to immediately, you heard the reactions, people went, oh, that's what you want. Okay, did this make anyone go, oh? It's a big number, but so what? Okay, so make it visual whenever you can.
So can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Do you have an opinion about that picture versus that picture with an overlay on the bottom with the stat? Or are you suggesting back-to-back slides? So for example, show them the number and then show them this is what that 1 centimeter piece looks like.
Either one.
Either way would work.
Yeah, either one.
You don't think
Makes
that
an
having
impact.
the words over the photo, or not, but on the photo, doesn't detract from the impact of the image?
Well, it could be something where you introduce this and talk about the challenges of trying to thread the needle here.
Okay.
And then that stat, 100 million pieces or 150 million pieces or whatever it is shows up.
Okay.
So there's no right or wrong answer to it, but it's just however you want to sort of build that story.
Right.
You can do it without the stats too, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I
You
mean,
just
you're
talk about
literally
the
like,
stats,
hey,
right.
this is the #1 problem we have to contend with, is getting through all of this debris. And that is why we have to do X, Y, and Z, or why the cost is such, or why we have to launch on a particular day.
What are copyright rules if pulling photos off the web to throw into our presentation? We just have to reference it? So,
It varies. I mean, in this context, I always reference wherever I can. So I'm being upfront about it. I think if you were doing something like where you were using it in advertising, you were using it to generate revenue, you need to be paying for it, licensing it, whatever that may be. Okay, in the context of a training or a closed door meeting, it's a little gray, but that's why I always try to cite it at least so that I'm being upfront about the fact that like, hey, this is where it's from, it's not mine, et cetera, et cetera. Because I mean, the reason the web is a fabulous resource for that. Especially when you're putting this stuff together and you just have this idea of like, oh wait, it'd be great if we had an image of X. Move the process. Okay. Speaking of images, this one I just pulled off the website. Numbers, make it visceral. They use imagery to make people respond to it, to make people feel it. As a side note, MichiganDogBiteLawyer.org. Very specific.
Wow.
Yes.
Who hasn't seen that face in the morning?
So another example, kind of like we were talking about with the debris, the space debris. Okay, more stats, more numbers. Anyone ever been up here to the observatory in this building? It's pretty impressive.
Mhm.
Just staggering. So
Is it not the Sears Tower anymore?
it's not the Sears Tower, it's the Willis Tower.
What you're talking about with it?
But again, kind of like that other example, lots of stats, lots of numbers. You know, if I don't know if I'm renting, if I'm a commercial real estate person, I'm talking about this building and you know the icon of the city, blah 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 blah. Yeah. But if I start with something like this,
Oh my God, that's the scariest place, isn't it? I was there.
okay, but I start with something like this, and this is the backdrop as I'm talking about the fact that you know this is the tallest building west of the Mississippi, da, 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 you know, whatever those sort of things are that you want to say. But I've kind of got you thinking about it, whether you're excited or terrified or whatever. It's visceral. I'm reacting to it.
Well, not with the Crocs in the picture.
Well, you take it a step further because you know this is what she's seeing. Because that thing overhangs. You know, it's a glass floor. So. See?
Yep.
So we got an O. We got a makes me ill. You know, but it's a reaction. Okay, far different than just a list of numbers and a list of bullets.
And the classic rooftop swimming pools in Chicago. Those are so fun.
All right, last but not least, make it personal whenever possible. We talked about sort of driving it from a national or global to a national to a state to a community level. Can you make it more personal than that? Can you put it in the living rooms of the people that you're talking to? So Jamie Oliver, Naked Chef, anyone heard of him?
Yes.
Yes.
Is that true?
Well,
I
so
can use that.
I paraphrase. I paraphrase. The point being that his TED Talk, this was essentially the point he was trying to make. Was about the eating habits, the diet, the health impacts that this has to the people in the community. Now, if he'd come out and said this, people would have dismissed it outright. You know, who the hell are you? You know, screw you, that kind of thing. But what he did is he came out on stage, and in the first 30 seconds, he asked people. He said, "Who here has children?" People with their hands up. Who here has grandkids? Who has nieces, nephews? Okay, within 10 seconds, he had the entire audience with their hand up.
Right.
Then he started talking about the stats around childhood obesity, what that does to them, how that impacts them. So now he's got everyone thinking about their loved one as he starts talking about those stats. Okay, so really simple technique. I mean, he had slides like this. He had stats, he had numbers, but he gave people context so that they understood why it was important, why it was meaningful. Okay. At this point, imagery, I hope it's fairly self-explanatory. Picture's worth 1,000 words. There is science behind this. Again, we talked earlier about the reason we're all here is because our ancestors figured out how to survive because they processed imagery faster than words. When they saw a lion or a tiger or someone with a spear or a rock or whatever it was, they got the hell out of the way. Okay, because they were able to react. We process imagery faster. You know? I think we probably all know this, but this is not going to get the same reaction as our little doggy friend. Right?
Put that on your fence.
We all know what to do if that comes running at us, right? I've scaled a few fences in my youth, very surprisingly, you know, because of that.
It looks a bit like Haley.
It does. It looks a little bit like our dog. But our dog is more friendly. So, enough said, images, wherever possible, use imagery. It's gonna take you a lot further than a bunch of words and bullets. So let's talk about the slides. Let's talk about the layout, the amount of information you're putting there. This is obviously becomes a pretty critical piece when we're talking about how to tell that story. So is Bill Gates, is this slide really helping tell his story?
That's the best slide I've ever seen.
I mean, it's really colorful, and you know someone probably got paid a lot of money to do that. Or maybe they were a contractor and they got paid nothing.
I have a question
Yeah.
on this. So this is interesting. I have a friend whose mother can't watch the news anymore because it's got the scroll on the bottom, and you know, this woman's in her 60s. So when you know your audience, I think that for millennials, don't they like this kind of stuff? That they don't?
I don't like it.
Well,
that's
too many
me.
words for them.
That could be
I don't like
slide.
I don't either, but it's just funny
Simple,
how.
Well, think about, you know, millennials, I think there's you know, it's bite-sized piece of information. So I'm not, again, no silver bullet. I mean, this may have been effective, but I would argue that it's not really doing a very good job of clarifying the story, and especially if he follows up with this.
Oh my
gosh, yeah, the cloud.
Shut down.
I mean, it's one slide, but I would argue this is the reason Microsoft has struggled so much in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Because their energies are all over the place. Okay?
Well-
And this slide, I think, is a perfect representation of that.
I recognize Bill Gates.
Is that in our,
That's the only thing I recognize
Well,
on that slide.
Antiquated
well, dude, is that a BlackBerry?
is what it is.
Yeah.
It's an
All right.
old school, it's talking to a whole different generation.
Yep. So the point of it is that when you're thinking about what to put on your slides, be they imagery or picture, or imagery or text or numbers, distill it down to what's really important. Simplify to get to the heart of what's important. Okay, really simple example. I wrote this out 4 or 5 years ago when I was thinking about like, hey, if data business around pitching presentations, what would it be and what would be its value? And this is what I wrote. Okay, but that's, you don't need to see that. That's a lot to take in. So, cut out all the crap you don't need and simplify the language wherever you can. Edit, clarify, simplify. Okay, think about each slide as a billboard and you're driving past it. Your audience is driving past it at 75 miles an hour. Okay, they need to, okay, you see those, I'm sure you see billboards out there and it's like got all this stuff and you can't.
Prepositions really aren't necessary. They aren't. We know what they are in our brain. We will fill them in.
Yeah.
So we do a lot of presentations and trainings in our business, and so obviously you kind of know what it is you're presenting, but I think a lot of times if it's new information, the bullets, it's basically because you're afraid you're going to forget to say something, so it's almost like your cheat sheet, which I know is, so we're going to talk later about the presentation piece in terms of how you can like get your brain wrapped around the slide that only has 4 words on it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the way I look at it is that a good presentation, it's a performance, and you are on stage.
Yeah.
You're there to be seen, and the slides are supporting you. So the 1 or 2 words on a slide is the visual prompt to keep you on track. But then you use those to expand. You can then elaborate on that, talk about it, tell the backstory, give it context. Okay, and that comes through rehearsing. Being really comfortable, and it's not memorizing. It's sort of you internalize it because you want to feel comfortable. You want to feel casual. If someone asks a question, you don't want that to throw you off your script. You don't want to be in your head. That's the problem. Is a lot of people when they're presenting, they're in their head because they're trying to remember everything, and as a result, they can't react to the room. So they can't tell when people are getting bored. They can't tell if someone's unsure. Their face is all crinkled up like. They can't see that because they're all in their head. Okay, so that comes from practicing, rehearsing, knowing your information. We'll talk a little bit about some of that. The other important thing, and I see this, when you talk about engineers, you talk about academics, there tends to be this sense of like real estate is precious, and I need to fill it up. I need to pack it, everything I can. Okay, that is what we do not want to do. People get wrapped up in how many slides are there. Okay, I want to do this in 12 slides. Well, if it takes you 18 to tell a more succinct story, you're better off to do that, okay, versus trying to cram 4 ideas onto 1 slide. Okay, so breathing space. So again, no silver bullets, but one of the things I use and I do with our clients is sort of the 1 by 3. So what I mean by that is with each slide, you have 1 thought, okay, 1 data point. Here's the problem. Here's the benefit. Here's the audience. Here's the market. Whatever that is. Doesn't mean you can't. It can't be 3.4 billion. Opportunity represented in Latin America. Doesn't mean you can't have multiple things, but it's 1 thought. Okay, and then the 3 is the elements you have on there. So my 1 thought is supported by as little as 3 things or less. Okay, again, no silver bullet, but what does that mean? So this could be my opening quote, or my little, 1 sentence opening. Why this problem matters, who it matters to. Okay, maybe this is a couple bullets. There's nothing wrong with bullets. It's just that people use bullets, for no, there's too many. It's unnecessary. It's lazy. Okay, image and a quote or a stat. Okay, this could have been that image of all that junk, that space debris, and then a little stat, 150 million pieces of debris. Okay, so that's what I mean. 1 thought, 3 points, or 3 supporting elements.
There's kind of a rule of three in everything. It's in comedy, it's in movie storytelling, it's a rule of three. That's why people can only choose between vanilla, chocolate, and strawberry.
Yep.
It is a rule of three. If you more choices beyond that, your brain does oftentimes. And you want to choose between vanilla, chocolate, and strawberry, but then you want to add on the nuts and the whipped cream and the cherry and the whatever.
But I need those
You made the first
foundational three. That's all I can remember. Exactly. And if you look at a lot of, if you look at, in the Bible, you look at in government literature, you look at the Constitution, all these things are threes. There's all these sayings. Okay, it's all in threes, so we remember it. Okay, so now we've talked about sort of numbers, we've talked about story, we've talked about imagery, we've talked about a variety of layout. So taking the stage, okay, this is where sort of the rubber meets the road, if you will. I love this quote. So we all have those anxieties, that nervous energy, that all those things that are going on when we're going to go present or pitch, get up in front of an audience, tell our story. Okay, so what are we concerned about? Okay, what do we think is going to happen?
Forget.
You're gonna suck.
Okay. Yeah.
They're gonna hate you.
Mm-hmm. No one's gonna see your phone or understand what you're saying.
You look fat.
Oh,
That's why I give Starbucks gift cards, because then they love you. You don't have to worry about any of that. Or give them that up front, and then they'll listen to anything you say. I promise. Seriously.
You fear that they're actually picturing you naked too.
I don't know where the history of that sort of approach came from, but it's a bad approach. I don't want to picture my audience.
Let's not go there.
So, fucking up. I'll just say it. Looking stupid, forgetting what I'm saying. In my case, I knocked over a glass of water in a conference room with 20 people in it. Knocked it across the whole table in a grand gesture to make my point. And if that wasn't bad enough, they had green folders because the company brand was green. Well, all the green ink started bleeding out of the folders on the table.
Yes.
Okay? So, whether it's your body doing something or whether it's your brain telling you you're going to screw it up, you're going to mess this up, you're going to screw up, you're going to knock over the water, you're going to forget everything. Okay, this is what's going on in our body. And this is biological versus psychological. Okay? When we talk about biological, what are we talking about?
Our inherent physiological nature to do stuff.
Respiration. What happens when we get up there?
Oh.
Heart rate. Heart rate.
Breathing accelerates oftentimes shortens.
You're going just right to it.
Wow.
Okay, but what goes on? Your face turns red, your heartbeat goes up, your palms get sweaty, you get nervous, you can't talk, your mouth goes dry, all those things. Okay, psychological. Okay, I'm going to fuck this up. I'm going to forget what I'm doing. I'm going to look like an idiot. My idea sucks compared to that last person that went. Okay? So on the biological, we've talked a little bit about this. What's going on there? Your body is hardwired. The only reason we're here is because we knew how to react to this. Yeah. Our body is giving us all the tools to survive. Fight or flight. Exactly. And even though I would imagine most of us are not encountering this in our day-to-day, when you get up on stage, your brain processes this exactly the same way. Okay, this is terrifying. Okay, biologically speaking, all these eyes looking at me, I'm going to die. Okay? I am going to die. Okay, so that's what's going on. So the point is, this is happening regardless of what you try to do. We're hardwired to have this problem. So we need to start thinking about it in this context. Okay, professionals, actors, news anchors, all these people, they all have rituals they go through. Okay, anyone, remember that previous quote? Anyone who says they're not nervous is probably lying. Okay? So what it comes down to is if you're going to be given, if your body is giving you this energy to start with, there's nothing you can do about it. And you've got your own sort of psychological things going on. It really comes down to a decision that you have to make. Are you going to be terrified at forgetting what I'm saying, making a mistake, knocking over a glass of water, falling off the stage, okay? You can think of 100 different things that could happen. Or, am I going to be excited? Okay, am I going to be excited about the opportunity what I'm doing? The thing that I've spent the last 5 years working on, the thing that my family has sacrificed so that we can create this business, can create this nonprofit, we can create this thing that I want to talk to you, or want to talk with you about today. Okay, you can be excited about the opportunity to be successful, okay, to be recognized, to have an impact. Okay, so it's really about you. You need to make that choice. To shine, you got 3 minutes, you got 7 minutes. Okay? So it's a choice, so think about that. Now, just like real estate, presentations and pitching have a mantra. Real estate, location, location, location. What do you think it is for presentations?
Don't fuck up, don't fuck up, don't fuck up.
Maybe.
Practice, practice, practice.
Yeah. And this is where most stuff goes sideways. Because people do it the night before, they half-ass it, or they think, hey, I know this. It's my business. I know it backwards and forwards. I can just go up there and wing it. Okay? When you watch any of these great speakers out there, be it Steve Jobs, be it someone at TED Talk, be it someone in a comedy routine, whatever it is, they have practiced the hell out of this thing. Okay? When you see those comedians up there, they have been workshopping these for 18 months leading up to the point where you see them, okay, in that documentary. Okay, and a pitch or a presentation, doesn't matter how small or big, is no different. Okay, it's really up to you. Because I said something about this earlier. If you're too lazy or busy to practice, then expect everyone in that audience to be too lazy or busy to pay attention. Okay, all the things we talked about lead up to this. Using story, knowing your audience, having the hook, using visuals to clarify. Okay, think about all the work that you've done to get to this point. You don't want to leave it to the night before. Okay, and I see this all the time. And it's the reason I have a business, but it's also amazing to me when you see these organizations that treat their presentations in this way. So we've kind of covered this, why you practice. I love this quote because I think it sort of sums up what we're talking about. You know, you don't want to fuck up, you don't want to look stupid, then practice, use that energy that you're being given, and if it's the fear that's driving you, so be it. Okay, but use what you need to take it to the place that will work. And remember, it's not about perfection, it's about confidence. Because remember, people are investing in you. They're investing in your business, your team, but ultimately it's you. So if you get up there and fumble around, use 5 words instead of 1, have a story that meanders all over the place, if I'm an investor, I'm thinking about, is this how they're going to run the business? You know, I mean, this is a big deal. They're here asking me for money. And look at this. It's a mess. Okay, so everything reflects positively or negatively on you, depending on how you do it. So the rehearsing and the practicing will give you confidence so you get out there. And even if you fuck it up occasionally, stumble on a line, forget something, the confidence will come through. You know? All right, so let's talk about some of the ways to do this. Okay, my big thing, I like to practice without slides. Okay, because at this point, you've done all the work. You know the subject backwards and forwards. You've put the slides together. You've noodled the stats. You've got your quote, your customer quote, your product images, whatever those are. You know this stuff. Okay, so sitting there looking at the slides, okay, you're going to start to rely on the slides too much. But if you close it, what it does is it helps you start to memorize what you're saying and get familiar with it and be able to think about it. Okay, what's my opening? What's my middle? What's the stat? What do I want to do? Okay, so practice without slides. Okay, walk around the kitchen. I sometimes do it in the car. And it's getting comfortable. It's hearing yourself talk. Okay, which leads to the next point. say it out loud. This whole notion of kind of mumbling under your breath or saying it in your head, say it out loud. Okay? It's going to help you get comfortable and confident. A lot of times people who are not used to speaking, their voice throws them off. The moment they get mic'd up and walk out on stage and hear themselves on speakers, the whole world becomes kind of closing in on them. Okay? Yeah.
Actually, I have a question about that because I've done a lot of public speaking, but whenever I have a microphone, something happens to my entire whole being that stops functioning. And so, are these presentations going to be mic'd, or are they not mic'd?
Yeah.
They are mic'd.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you have a system for, do you just own a microphone to practice working with a mic so you can listen to your voice in that way?
If that's what you need, then yeah. Because I think everyone's going to be different. Some people, it's a camera. I've watched people that can come up in front of 100 people and rock and roll, no problem. And the moment you put a little video camera in front of them, and that's
definitely the sound
different.
of my voice.
Yeah.
Because inflection, your emotion, all that stuff that you generally convey that you don't think about sounds very, very different through a microphone.
Yeah. Yeah. So saying it out loud, and if you need to have a mic,
just go find a mic somewhere.
Yeah, you got to do whatever you need to do.
Earplugs during your presentation.
Earplugs?
Yeah, so you don't hear the speaker.
If you think that your amplified voice distracts you,
yes,
and you're worried that you're going to blow it because of that, why not put earplugs in?
So earplugs will create the same effect, is what you're saying?
I don't know. I've never tried it.
You could. I would just be careful that you might miss then a question from the audience, or you might forget.
In our context, we have
you mean while I'm presenting? Oh, no, I couldn't do that. But maybe while I'm practicing. I'm just going to go get a microphone.
Start practicing with that.
Yeah, because the other thing, the goal with all of this, we've talked about the practicing, the rehearsing, all this stuff, is that what you want to try and create is whether it's a room of 5 people or a room of 5,000 people, you want to create that same level of comfort that you have on a one-on-one conversation. Okay, and if you imagine the last time you were having that conversation, having coffee with a friend or a business colleague, you can't be tuned out. You need to be listening and paying attention. And a presentation is no different because you need to be reacting to the audience. So if you're seeing people starting to nod off, people starting to stretch or play with their phones, you got to react to that feedback. I was at a panel discussion a couple years ago, and there was 3 or 4 people that already spoke, and the last guy got up, and the first thing he did is he took the microphone off the table and he walked out into the audience and he said, "Come on, we need to get some energy going here." Because he could see that people were starting to drone out, lose it, and he walked out in there. So that's part of that getting comfortable, getting confident, so you can see that. You're not in your head just kind of, oftentimes, I'm sure we've done this, you get up, you do your thing, and you get off, and you have no memory of what happened in the last 10 minutes. Okay? It's like when you talk on a cell phone in a car. You drive from one side of the city to the other, and you have no memory of how you got there. What speed did that take? I don't know. So it's the same thing. But the goal is that you want that confidence, not perfection. You want to be able to react to the audience. And so practicing without slides, saying it out loud, using a mic if you need to.
Do you time it when you're practicing?
I think it's a good practice to get into. It's like so many things. If you think about whether you're training for a sporting event, whether you're painting a picture, whatever you're doing, it's about kind of honing it down and practicing and getting to a certain point. You can't just go run a marathon. It's about building up to it. And a presentation is the same way. So I think you have a sense of okay, I'm going to have 10 minutes. So you put all your stuff together and you do the first run through, and it takes, wow, that took 18 minutes. Crap. Okay, I'm going to have to pull out a bunch of stuff, run through it again. Okay, I'm down to 12 minutes, that's getting better, down to 8. And then when you get it to a place, and I do feedback panels for pitch events where you see this. The first practice session, we have 3 minutes and everybody does 5 minutes. And they're like, God, I don't know how to get it in 3 minutes. This is insane. But by that third practice session, they've got it down to 2 minutes and 50 seconds. Okay, and it's poetic, it's well paced, there's pauses. But in the beginning, they never thought they could get there. Okay, so again, it's about that, putting in that work, doing that rehearsing, doing that practicing. And if you can, do it in front of other people, whether it's your family, some people at the office, whatever it is, because they may see things that you can't see. And it's good to get that feedback, that independent feedback. Because there may be some acronym that you're using that everybody gets, and then you say it to them, and they're like, what? You know, I used to see this when we worked with Microsoft all the time. And all these things that didn't mean anything to anybody but the people in that room. And they were busy trying to figure out how to go out and engage an audience or engage the customer. Another thing is moving around. As you've noticed, I kind of am wandering around. Okay, but when you are practicing, you want to move around. There's a couple things that's going to do. It's going to help combat some of that nervous energy. Okay, because your body's giving you that energy, and you need to get it to go somewhere. So if you're standing there, it's all just coursing around in your body, okay, and making you nervous, and making you sweat, and making you shortness of breath, and drying out your mouth, and all those things. But if you move around, it kind of helps get it out. And if you're doing it when you're practicing, it's going to give you that comfort to do it when you're on stage. Because the other thing is, when you get on stage or when you get in front of an audience, when you move around, people will track you. People will follow you. If you're standing in one spot, I see this all the time. You know, they stand over in the corner behind the podium, and they sort of get as far as they're in the shadow. You know, well, you just removed 50% or more of the value from the presentation because you're not in it. Okay, so be there, be present, move around. Okay, I'm sure we've seen great speakers, and there's these pauses where they just sort of stop. They walk around. It's like that teacher when you're in school, and you're terrified that they're going to ask you a question. Okay, these are all little things that you learn to try and keep the audience engaged, keep them on, on point.
Also, you gotta be careful that you don't do like a short distance that you're constantly doing, and it's very repetitive. That's very annoying.
Yeah, yeah, and again, just like the voice and the practicing, you'll find your own comfort level. Because some people are quite, they can stand in one spot and they can sort of do this, and they can use their hands, and they can look over here and look over here, and it's fine. And then other people, it's a bigger format or whatever it is, they need to move around. But you do want to sort of avoid the, kind of this thing because it,
Well, and there's dramatic pauses too. You don't want to distract people from what you're also saying either. So there's a speed and a pacing that it's got to be a comfortable movement as opposed to a nervous, perhaps, or distracting movement.
So there's two of us. Do you have strategies for two presenters, or are we supposed to just pick one, or?
Yeah, I think, when you have multiple presenters, it's a matter of I think, understanding when the handoff is going to happen, who's going to talk about what, and rehearsing for that, so that, it can be very specific in terms of, yada, yada, yada. And now Julie is going to talk to you about the financial component of this idea. Or it can be more, almost like a theater performance where there's, I kind of talk and I do my little intro, and then like my other co-founder walks out and they say, yeah, so Brad was talking about blah, 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 blah. Here's how we're going to do it. Da, 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 da. Brad, why don't you show them that thing? Brad's going to run you through the demo.
You guys work so well in tandem, and you have such a good cohesion going on with you and your business partner that makes it fun and enjoyable. I think that would be really nice.
Like that number that Shirley things on play.
Well, one of you seems like you're more about the numbers and the other one is more about the presentation. Anyway, you think your personality and stuff like that play to your strengths that way. I don't know, I could be wrong, but it just seems that way.
And the goal, it's, we've talked about a lot of different things, and there's a lot of prep and a lot of work that goes into it, but the goal is to bring what is truly you to the forefront, so people can see if you're funny, if you're dorky, if you're comfortable, if you're aggro. Whatever it is, it's finding out a way to harness that. I have a client right now, and she's talking about she's trying to achieve balanced weird. And she said, I tend to get a little weird on stage, okay, but I want this to be accessible. So I want this to be, I don't want to be too weird. And so it's finding that balance. But it's again about you. It's, your personality is obviously different than someone else's. And the two people on your team have different personalities. And so letting that shine through. Wasn't it boring the hell out of you? Okay. All right.
Yes, Dan.
Okay. So as I said, your slides are not the performance, you are. It's that relationship between you, what you're saying, how you're saying it, and what you're showing on screen. Okay, now I've already kind of touched on this, but in closing, when you get up there, okay, you're the knowledge keeper. Everyone's there to see you, and that's the way you need to think about it. And I don't mean that in a egotistical way. I mean that from the standpoint that own it, okay? Don't get up there and be all quiet, or stand in the corner in the shadows and kind of do this, okay? Because remember, you've sacrificed, your family sacrificed. You've done a lot of work to get here, okay? So don't go out there and be all meek and tiny and monotone about it. Go out there and be the star. Okay, go out there and own it. Okay, walk out there with confidence, project your voice, use your hands, move around, make eye contact with people. Because you're the star. You've done all the work to get there, and you want people to feel that passion, feel that energy, so that they take that idea and are inspired to take it to the next place. Give you money, buy your product, give you a call, whatever the hell that is. Okay?
How else are they gonna read all 15 bullets though? If
You have to stand with your back and read it to everybody.
We'll do some of the Amy Cuddy body language words in the green room before you go on stage.
Oh, just the horse thing.
Part of it is like getting, really stretching out, getting very big and very relaxed before you go on stage. It really helps.
Yeah, deep breath. So I didn't really cover it, but that nervous energy. If you can, if it's really something that affects you, try and dissipate that. Go to the gym. Go for a run. Do something.
What about beta blockers? She'll give me that.
I don't know. We're getting to a whole other place, but if it works for you, talk some shots. Yeah. How much liquor should we consume on the stage? So then when you get off, you're like, I don't remember any of it. They're like, yeah, because you were passed out. So we had to drag you away.
Well, the very first night at Grover's house, I'm pretty comfortable talking, but I realized I had had 2 glasses of wine already before I went up there, and it's like, had to kind of slow down because I knew it's going to fall off the stage.
Yeah, you'll be memorable. You may not get the call, but you'll be memorable if you fall off the stage.
I'm amazed when you watch like Tonight Show, how these actors go on and you can see they're totally nervous sometimes. And a lot of times they show up and they're drunk. And these are actors. This is what they do all the time. But they go on
They don't have a script.
Exactly. It's one thing to get, imagine you're doing your pitch and you've done it 20 times and you're super comfortable. And then you're in a situation where like, you don't know what they're going to ask you. You don't have any control, and you're supposed to be funny and you're supposed to be engaging.
Yeah. Just so much pressure to be funny.
So one of the things that is important to take away from this, there's lots of great stuff here, but Ashley is always good at challenging me in practice because he's always, kind of when I phone it in, right? He's usually at these events. He's like, hey, that was great. You really should have worked that out. And it's totally true, like he knows. And I've done a lot of speaking, and I really enjoy it. But for example, I've got this presentation going to Puerto Rico next week. I've already worked it 6 times. We've cut the slides down from a great number to a short number. We're going to work it 3 more times today with cultural people who are from that culture giving us feedback, and then we'll cut it down again, and then we'll work it next week before I go, and then we'll work it the day before. So I will probably have 40 or 50 repetitions of this 10 or 15 minute pitch done before I walk into it. And I do this all the time, and it's still that important for me. It's like weeding a garden, so you have to get the repetition in and the practice out loud in front of the screen.
And be prepared to adapt. So, when I go to a bunch of these pitch events all over the state, so when they say something and it doesn't resonate, or they say something and it throws people off on a side note, I had someone there at this thing the other day, and he mentioned that they're low labor. But give it any context or explain it. And I was in the audience, I heard someone go, did he say prison labor? And the person was like outraged, that they would. So, but my point is that.
Back to the park benches, was that the guy?
Pardon?
Was it the company that manufactures all the park benches?
No, it's a company that it was in the solar industry, but. Anyway, the point is, you want to be refining this. You're always going to have that basic story. Ready to pitch meetings, whatever they are. All right, any questions? I've gone half an hour over time, so I appreciate everyone's patience.
Do you have a card?
I have a card. And let me ask you this, what are you going to do with your idea now? Okay.
Practice with a microphone.
Well, give it a story.
Yeah, all right.
Well, I actually had a question about practicing because how do you get true feedback if you're not practicing with an audience that's relevant to the one that you're going to be presenting to?
Well, so keep in mind, you've done your due diligence up front to try and understand what are the things that they're going to want to know. So hopefully you've started to address some of that.
Okay.
And then, it's up to you. Again, if you need to find a couple people that are in the space you're interested in to really get good feedback, great. If it's just people that you work with or your family, that's great too.
I'm just kidding.
Justin, Tony, other than your peers.
We're your family.
You are my family.
So the last portion of this program is geared towards getting you from here to there.
Okay, because I do need people.
Yeah, that'll be
the next 3 to 4 weeks.
Yeah, that'll be the next
Nice.
thing we do is basically we'll look at what you've got, we'll present it,
Okay.
and then we'll provide feedback. Now, I'm obviously not an investor, but I can give you
Seen enough
context for
pictures.
certain things. Yeah.
Justin,
All right,
how we do that
any other
portion?
questions?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So you had the slide where you talked about yourself.
Huh?
And I've watched presentations before, and I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but you gotta be careful when you're talking about yourself, but you don't talk too much about yourself. But I mean, Greg talks about himself a little bit, but not much. He had a slide where he talks kind of his board of directors and gives it. But I mean, what's your opinion on that? I mean,
It's like so many things. I think you need to find that balance. Because yes, I talked about myself, but I did it for what, like 20 seconds,
Oh,
2
not
slides?
even, yeah.
He also talked about his family.
Yeah.
Was it?
Yeah, I didn't talk about
flattery. You didn't talk about it.
Yeah, it's because what you're trying to do is give them context and build credibility to support the topic you're going to share with them. And when we're talking about whether you're talking about investment or just people in general, I mean, we invest in people, we make that connection. And it's interesting, there's a guy named Chris Smith, who a colleague of mine who does sort of branded storytelling, that kind of thing. And he says when he goes networking, the last question he asks is, what do you do? Because in his mind, that stops the conversation, because then we immediately fall into, the listing of credentials or the business or the whatever. He says, I want to know who you are. Like, oh, you have kids, or you're from Tucson, or you're, and I mean, and he's, when he does his workshops and he presents, I've seen him a few times, he talks about the fact that, I'm a 6th generation Arizonan, and I'm a cowboy, and I've got this, and he's wearing a bowler tie, which, nobody, in a lot of these formats, you don't see people wearing bowler ties, but it's intriguing. And in his opening, he talks about, this is the tie that my great-grandfather wore, blah, 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 blah. So suddenly the whole audience is kind of like, wow, this whole tie just now has a new context. So again, it's finding that balance. I think you need to recognize that depending on the audience, there may be a need to talk about you, but it's the amount that you need. Okay, the worst is when you have 5 slides or 10 slides and it's about my credentials and our company and we do this and we do that. And looking at the context, it's like, well, maybe the only reason you're in the room is because they already know about you. So they don't need to hear it all. But for me, I put a little bit out there because except for Adam and a few people, nobody knows me. So who am I to tell you how to do this?
Yeah, who are you?
Okay, so a little bit of context, but just enough.
The context of this group, right, is that you should talk about yourself pretty much in any pitch, whether you're going with investors or anything. Very least you're introducing yourself and you're doing that. I think the best way to do that in here, probably as well as in our presentations, but also maybe if you were trying to pitch to an investor, is to take talking about you and turn it into your why, right? So why is it that you're working on this?
Justin, in this group, we have the 30-second video intro to do that for you.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's almost like a third person.
Yeah, so we force that
journalistic
upon the whole
standpoint.
conversation, so that's
it's
true.
on the screen, it's very large, so when you walk up, you start with the problem.
So
you already know who you are and why.
Yeah, so to Tony's point, the thought of making the part that's about you also your why is something to be intentional about. We're actually, I've forgotten, we pull that piece out and make everybody watch it, and it's in a nice video form. But you will want to do that and recognize that that's an important way to weave it in, or a very valuable way to weave it in. Because then what you're doing is, this is why it's relevant. And it's not just, well, I'm smart, everybody follow me. It's, this is how I got to be passionate about this thing.
Well, can I ask you a question then? Because the new Gen guys are coming on Monday to interview me. So something that came out of this is, I was wondering if I should show, I like to show my before and after pictures occasionally. I mean, I use them in my business quite a bit, but I don't want to make it about, I don't want people to think that I'm trying to sell a weight loss thing, because that's not what it's about. But would that be something to potentially put in that video piece, is because it tells the story, it tells part of the story of my why really well when you see a picture.
So there's that's a good way to do it if you're going to do that piece of it about you. You don't have to do that piece about you. You could do that piece about somebody else if you wanted to.
Right.
If that's the way you get into this, but it's all about how you flow that in.
Right. I wouldn't have put it in an intro. I would put it at slide 8 or something, like in the wrap up at the end, because they need to understand the other parts first. But
there's no objective answer to this.
Okay.
At the end of the day, there's no like you're wrong or you're right.
Okay.
It's within the flow of the, unless you disagree.
No, I think it's how much how much value does it play? You know, if it is a story about you and that transformation, is it pivotal to why this business happened and why you're here today?
Well, no, it's not. Well, I mean, it is, yes and no, but in this particular case, I can't show pictures of actual clients because of HIPAA. And so if we need to have some pictures, or if we're trying to make a point of like really what is, showing me at my absolute worst and how this has helped me, you know what I mean? It would be just an.
You can always get, a sign off from one of
I could, yeah.
But I mean, if it is about you, there's also some value there in terms of, putting yourself out there, and maybe you give that some context. Like 5 years ago, if I thought that I was going to be up here showing a picture of myself, I wouldn't have believed it. But I had this transformation happen, and this is the result, and this has put me on this course, and I'm empowered to help other people have this benefit in their life.
Right. Okay, I'll figure that out.
Well, and the other thing you can do in that context is show the before, and you're on stage as the after. Right?
Yeah.
So you're not, it's not kitschy and cliched.
Oh, that's a good idea.
It's just you're telling a personal story.
You could open with that. It's just up there.
Yeah, like you want to see what unhappiness looks like.
Yeah, there's a lot of creative ways to pull this powerful thing out.
All right, so that's that.
What we would like to do is take a quick bio break, and then if you can stay with us a little bit, is to have Justin do his Startup Tucson pitch, which is like 10 minutes, and have you continue. Okay. If you're comfortable.
Do you need to go?
You've got to go.
Let me check in. I was supposed to get it here by 10.
That's no problem.
If not, we're going to continue with the slide.
And if anyone's interested, we got business cards, and I was asking about what you're going to do with your ideas. I hope you're all going to love them enough to present them with purpose. That's right. So if you want a button, grab a button. Thank you. I appreciate it.
5 minutes. Thank you. 5 minutes, folks. You're going to present next. If you got to roll, you got to roll.
Yeah.
Justin just brought it.
Yeah, I mean, the other way to do it is, even if you need to go, I'm just going to make that. Fly everything.
Okay. I might do that. Let me see. Okay.
I'll do some ball.
Before you go,
Okay. Oh.
Are you really? Okay, good. I know, right?
Yeah, no, there is a page where they're thinking about if we could see one.
Oh, nothing, just
And I tried so hard, I know, I have such a calculator, like, if I go to this.
Did you help with the special measures stuff?
Yeah, actually, I was up on Tuesday. I was up at
There's no.
Right.
You go to bed? See, that's everything else.
That's a very your brain.
Yeah, that's my brain, that's my brain.
No, it's literally that. You go to bed?
Because I,
So
that's
this
what
is
I
why you're
love
also
about
now
that.
like
Is
an
that
addictive
I
personality, like you
don't
could do
mentor
that
each
and
of
be
the
like, I'm
people.
gonna do it
I
again.
get to see that first practice.
I wouldn't say that.
If I did it, I would be like,
See the way
that
people
off, like I was wrong.
And all of them,
Like,
they
I
get up there,
would-
first practice, they're like, God, how do I get this into 3 minutes? And everyone's like, 5 minute break, and it's a matter of sort of scrubbing out
Yeah.
things and reorganizing this, and they come back. And I mean, everything about it is a full performance, you know, in terms of the talking points, the emotion.
Well, that sort of resonated with me because I know that Debbie from Top.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
But my wake up person
See, the thing is,
You know what I mean?
you have to break it, yeah, you have to
But
break
she
it.
cried a few times in the,
It's so small, it's like
which is
That
good.
was an
because I
awesome
think it-
story.
Yeah,
That's it.
Yeah.
And then they bring it back to this.
yeah, so to find that balance, you know, do you need to cry, not necessarily, but.
Okay.
But if I go like, all right.
Actually, I have a question.
That's too much.
If I would have.
This is nice.
Yeah, the dog.
My business, there's
Damn dog is not
there's
helpful.
two main
It's
bar
not the dog,
categories.
it's like, get up, get up. Better
Question
be
on the
like, but not get up.
Is it important in the beginning to open by introducing the two broadening categories, or should I go with, because I've got a really good story to tell, should I go with the story that really only focuses on the category? Like, should I be more interested in doing the really great opening story, or should I be more concerned with, I kind of feel like that's probably more important than trying to like, I don't need to explain in depth what my business is about. I need to hook them with the story, and if I even just focus on that one area of business.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, it doesn't, you can use the story as a catalyst to talk about other things, but I think that the point is you are creating something that is immediate. I mean, it's like that story I mentioned. Where it's, you know, I open my eyes.
Branded storytelling, viral marketing, video marketing.
This is actually a woman that made a really
It's a 2 hour.
created a mobile food truck, if you will,
The secretary.
for homeless people. Aside from feeding them and empowering them, she reclaims her community that's going to go thrown out, grocery stores, restaurants.
Like,
I
mean, they have-
You know, they make healthy
Yeah,
meals.
healthy
And for her, it was all about,
Yeah,
she called it out
yeah,
her story,
yeah.
the fact that she opened her eyes, she thought, you know, she was hoping that she'd be dead.
People
Drug
are
addiction, she was just on. She was-
Everybody I've talked to who's from Puerto Rico, is like, they're very proud people. And you, they don't see Chris.
Attention.
Well, like, I don't talk about the
Job
problem that
understood and changed her life. So she's trying to create that.
people perceive you as having crime, you get the virus without being criticized.
I mean, she was one of
These
the.
aren't actual problems, these are the problems with perception of being travelers.
Well, that's
We need to
it.
fix that.
Yeah.
Like, so that's how much maybe it is. That's not testing.
By the end,
But
everybody.
there's
I heard an interesting statistic about how many Puerto Ricans in the United States women. And how many Puerto Ricans. Yeah, it's like, so that, they probably need to say, you have 4 million.
Well, now they're so empowered.
That's part of it, because they're all very proud of it, so they're on for viral.
Some of the, I tweet out.
When Chris first did it, it was beautiful. It was like 40
I think
seconds.
last time I told you all the numbers.
I know we have 2 hours, but it has to be 20 or less. And then we got it down to 20, 17, but it's a lot of stuff on each slide. Like, all right, then we got the bullet points in half. Then we got the bullet points in half. Now we got the bullet points in half, right? It's just this chipping away. I get tired of giving. I'd like to reverse. I'd like to start with, here's how I was doing an amazing talk that's really inspiring, and then just come up with a topic to do it around that fits that, right? Instead of the other way around. That'd be way more fun. Like, I'm gonna just do a talk that you're like, fuck yeah! I don't even care what it's about. Like, I'm just gonna build the structure, the positives and negatives, and the photos, and like, you know.
One of the best presentations I ever gave, I was at this conference in Switzerland, and all these people were talking, and it was like everybody got to get up and talk. And like, so you're wearing headphones, people spoke in different languages. And some of them were drawn out long, people were tired. And I got up there and I literally put it all together throughout, through from everyone else. And it was funny as hell. And you know you're funny when it's through interpretation, audience to audience. Because you tell the joke in English and all the English speakers laugh, and then about 6 seconds later, everyone else laughs.
Right.
So they sound really funny.
Right, because this keeps going.
That's awesome. But I was able to just pull from people's presentations, and that's what made it so good, you know? And so I did have the guidelines, but I plugged in all everyone else's work. So like, I was thinking how you can like pay attention.
Why are you bringing me this evil?
Yeah, and as long as there's.
Every time I see a Girl Scout, I have to buy.
I joined Girl Scouts just so I could sell the cookies. The 1 year.
You don't eat them all, Cody.
Yeah, they're tasty too.
I can't touch them.
A little sugar, a little bit of sugar, a little bit of caffeine. All right. What? No.
Yeah. I was before.
I really need to dedicate. I'm like, I think I'm just gonna change it while this is fresh. So you're like, it's not trying to find pictures that tell the story. Oh, or something like that.
I want to actually.
I will do that. I will do that.
My traveling is during this. I don't know why.
People have an interest in what
and your customers, your family. Yeah, we're working on the venue. We can do the same date, but we're working on getting confirmation on which venue we're going to use.
Is this date correct in here?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
April 13th.
Yeah, so it's on the.
Mario series, have you heard of it?
I haven't gone, but I heard this. I should go.
Starts in November.
All right, go.
Barrio stories.
Thank you.
Like stories of the barrio, Tucson things. Something
Oh, you
maybe
should stand
right.
up. That's how I practice.
Have you heard of that?
Yeah. Is it today?
I'm sorry for the jokes.
Today I tried
I would just get down to like the subject line, each set of jokes, like 7 or 8 jokes, 10 jokes.
How did you answer the
You
reindeer
know, it's
question?
either around the topic, right?
Answer the what?
And I would get
And
down
you
and
slide,
memorize.
why are all the reindeer names, why are they all not girls?
Oh,
Well, the jokes.
Cultural bias.
I just said, how do you know that the names are not female?
Don't you know what that means?
But I tried to
Remember what I said? You're trying to, we don't sugarcoat anything, so. Oftentimes, the thing is, he asks things that the way to describe it is too,
and I would just like mix it.
it's too complicated. Like, he's asking questions about like race or politics. That's a big question.
It's in the DNA, yeah, well, you know what, it's good about how you get clear on.
But actually, I think both of those questions or those comments came in the same moment, pulling into the parking lot at school. Which I thought was very much the way they are, that he's very inquisitive that way, and my other son is like, food and TV.
You're a wiser man.
Yeah, but so, this radio, I think a radio looks up to speak. But I think, even when I do radio now, warm-ups and we talk pictures, get my
Not that I ever
voice
did cocaine.
like I
No,
get in
I
that
never did
headspace,
that.
right?
So I don't- it's just-
So I did tongue twisters while hiking in a radio. Well, I was lived like a mile and a half away from the station, so I'd walk through this fields and woods and whatever. It was cross country, right?
I was a really young kid. I was at the park with a girlfriend. And like, she was the worst feeling. My hair was always really upset. Yeah, it was like, why would you want to-
Yeah.
I'll be happy to record myself.
Yeah. Make sure you have my cell phone.
I have recorded. Closest thing to that,
Text me so that I make sure not to forget to get a couple
Okay.
Oh, okay. I invite to everyone.
Chris's
So I need to remember to always email address.
And I swear, it seemed like every year I'm hanging over and I realize eating that thing.
Which one is it?
That caffeine. I'm like, gosh.
Never do that.
I'm on that. It tends to be.
You're always looking.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
It's like legal now.
Yeah.
But it.
There may be a note.
$75 milligrams, like X of release.
Pretty strong.
Yeah, yeah, and I only take it weekdays, so
In the morning?
Yeah, morning, yeah.
My daughter said, I could tell, she's like, so you know, so I had to get my homework done. And like, she
Yeah.
told me
All those
something.
Yeah.
Stop.
And then Thursday.
Yeah. Oh, I went to refugee. You're prescribed. I'm prescribed now. Like for 24 hours straight, because I had to get at least 98% of the bugs per day, and I pulled it off, and like, it was just
Next
up
Tuesday.
It kept you.
Yes.
So we need to talk about.
Yeah, it was like 40, 58, yeah. Well, I was like,
The 10th.
things like that. I'm surprised.
Yeah.
The first time I ever took it, too, you know, so, yeah, no, really.
Yeah, no tolerance.
Yeah, exactly, so I had no tolerance at the time.
I think
For long slides,
I felt.
usually between 30 minutes.
Yeah, yeah, and that was like, okay, well, yeah, we kept it.
Yeah.
So we didn't try to break that. Usually I try to do like 4 hours during the day and half hour blocks.
Yeah.
I don't make it open everybody.
Yeah. I'm not really kind of.
And what it tends to be is,
Yeah.
what is in your slide deck that you're stuck.
It does bring that out.
Information from, right? Like
Well,
my experiments on
anything.
how do I?
Yeah, even.
I didn't do the market research, or I don't have it,
Too much
typing in this number.
Or marijuana.
How would I
Yeah,
explain
yeah.
this
Oh,
thing?
yeah.
Well, that's a different kind of anxiety.
Yeah. Oh,
So that's
It's
part of the due diligence process,
when
because
you're
by the
good,
end of
you
this,
write down.
you get up and you talk for 7 minutes, so you know what.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
and
It's
something entertaining.
got all your
Yeah,
numbers, your data,
You just go out and say, yeah, I got a good dance.
Just don't
You're
sit
ready.
there.
Like if you could talk to, you've gone through the work to make sure.
Yep. There's no more class.
More Thursday.
Yeah, no Thursday. Just individual. Okay, cool.
Yep.
I was actually thinking about.
And I was gonna have two of those lectures that were gonna be
I
additional
would love
lectures,
to
but I'm in
take
Puerto
your
Rico for
brain,
those
your
two
web
Thursdays.
brain,
And then I'm leading also.
coffee or whatever. Do you have time now?
No. but-
So I'll have to push
No,
it to the end or
Yeah.
something.
So after this,
What?
So I'll leave the
I
12.
don't know, it's just interesting to me how you always know exactly what the hell he's talking about. I don't have time to go find websites. And then like, I don't have to, I don't have time to search to find shit, so I'd rather go to people who've already searched a lot and then say, okay, tell me the cool shit. Is there anything out there that does this? Is there anything out there that does that? Because you seem to know everything that's out there.
Well, I mean, I also operate in the online space. I mean, in
Right,
addition
exactly, that's what I'm
to
saying.
do something, I do online marketing.
Oh, do you? Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, so that's why I'm.
Well, that's what I'm saying, I want, that's why I'd like to just try to find out, because I have questions about whether other shit is out there, and sometimes you can't do this by doing search terms. You can say you could,
No.
try to search for something, and sometimes it
So we're already-
Yeah,
it doesn't come up.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not even related to this,
we already did it, yeah.
but just in general, like,
Greg, would you want
I
to?
don't know how
How was
people
Greg, by the
like
way?
you hold all that shit in your head either.
That guy pitches.
Well,
well.
I did a startup,
Mhm.
It's seen that 2012.
Yeah.
We built an app.
Oh.
And so, and I was
See what it does.
to it lean.
See if my other speaker's here.
I wouldn't say it like.
We're checking to see if our Karen's
It's just
coming
like,
in.
it was hard to get traction.
Is she?
And, but I mean, I pitched with it and I had a developer working on it and I was, going to a lot of startup meetings and doing a lot of research on how to, manage it and everything that goes along with that. And, I've applied, it was during that process when I also realized it probably isn't really catching on like it should be, that I decided to do something full time
Right.
because I just could not go back to working for anybody else.
Right,
And so I've applied what I learned.
Right.
into what I do now.
Exactly. So, yeah, that's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was I was showing Justin the other day, it was it's kind of like Groupon meets Yelp kind of thing, but like criteria based. It was a survey for people that wanted deals at restaurants.
Right.
So you would go in there and while you're there, you answer like 5 to 12 questions. And it would unlock a deal. And you show it to your server and then boom, you get the deal. And then they get the restaurant would get the feedback.
Right.
And it wouldn't be public. Did we whatever? There's specific questions. I still think it would work, but we need to like 500 grand.
So do we
To do
have
it
that on Thursday the 10th?
you can't, you really can't push it without a big budget. And it was funny because this guy that I met with early on, he's like, you need $1 million to do this, right? He had worked with startups in the Bay Area, and I was like, whatever. And like a year later, I'm like, yeah, we need it.
Damn it, right. I know, well, that's it.
These days, you need a marketing. You want your idea to fly, like you got it. You're not gonna get viral exposure anymore,
Right.
unless you're really, really lucky. You can't make that a. You can't rely on that as a method. You could get lucky, and that would be awesome.
Well,
but you can't say in your plan we're gonna
rely on it too much, or they believe it's always going to be viral.
Yeah, you can't say in your business plan or well, not your business plan. Whatever, you can't say we're gonna market using viral methods. Like, people document it.
absolutely. Well, and this is what I was saying to Tony earlier, I mean, it's like the learning curve time for me to do some of this crap, I just don't have that kind of time. I just do not have that kind of time. I'm like, I need to know who in town does this kind of digital advertising and does it in a way that's manageable for a small company. Because all the large ad agencies that do it most of us don't have that budget.
Absolutely, really good.
Yeah.
Absolutely, it's really good.
Yeah, I do it. I do that. That's
You
what
do
I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I have I do Tucson Foodie and Soapbox social media. And we do AdWords and Facebook ads for all kinds of businesses.
And like, I don't, I mean, although HubSpot, I looked at them and other, I don't really trust.
We're gonna shift gears a little bit here.
I need to see the whites of the eyes of the person that's doing it.
Yeah.
I don't, because I know not to be dangerous. So I need,
Because there's really-
I feel like I want to get educated along the way. I don't want to just.
There's really only a few ways to go get. I actually was on the phone with a guy the other day. You'll appreciate this, Karen, and Andy, you'll love this. And he said to me, "We need to get some capital into this business, but the bank's not interested in young, and I don't really have the ability, so we can't go the bank route. We need to get, $10 or $15, $20,000, and we don't want the person to have equity. So what options do we have?" I'm like, nothing. Hit the lottery, like crowdfund it, like your choice. Like there's debt and there's equity and there's a bunch of other weird stuff. Maybe sign a giant contract. I don't know, but you can't. People just magically give you money for nothing. Like, I haven't found those people yet. If they're out there, I'm gonna go shake that tree. But.
The loan shark.
So we
nothing.
talked about crowdfunding, which is one kind of challenging way to raise some money. Pre-tail, it's easier. We do a lot of pitching around equity. That's actually probably the smallest percentage of fundraising that goes on in this town. And Karen is going to talk to you about how to go get debt financing. Yeah.
What kind of funds?
Are you ready for me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Just take up a sign sheet at home.
Yes.
So for my grant.
We'll do it.
Hello, everyone. Hello. So first, I'm going to apologize. Oh, can we turn the light off?
Absolutely.
First, I'm going to apologize for the way I dress, the fact that I'm sweaty, dusty, and have cardboard shavings all over me. I work for a federal grant called Small Business Development Center. It's nationwide, and we have one right here in Tucson. The good thing about the grant is it's free. It's free. It's free. It's free. We all heard that. You can come in for one-on-one advisement by appointment as often as you like on almost any subject that you might be interested in, and we don't charge for that. The federal taxpayers pay for this service nationwide. We have no marketing budget, so you'll never see us advertise. The only advertising that we do is coming to speak to people with the sound of our voice and a lot of word of mouth in the community. So Rick Loveland was here last week. I don't know if he spoke or not, but he is my colleague in the office. And I have a former fellow colleague here today, and that's Amanda Holbert, who officed with me for how long? Maybe 6 months? Yeah. 6 months to a year? Yeah, in a very tight office. We're moving this morning, and that's why I'm dressed like this. My hair in a knot, no makeup. And usually you'll see me in dress slacks and heels and, you know, all the hoopla that goes with being in business. I'm going to sit down, if y'all don't mind. So we are moving. Federal grants don't have EIN numbers, which means you have to be hosted by someone who does have an EIN number, an employment identification number, which is, you know, like a social security number for a business with IRS. And we are going to move to Pima College this morning. The trucks are already on their way without me, and be hosted there. So our new location as of noon today is the Pima Community College Community Campus, which is located at 401 North Bonita Avenue.
Back to where you used to be.
Yeah.
A long time ago.
We were on Bonita for years, first at Pima and then with Micro Business Advancement Center. Now we're back at Pima again. So it's a different location that we haven't had. We'll be up on the 2nd floor. Before I go, I'll write my phone number, which I was given at 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon, and my email, which I haven't set up yet. So if you'll give me until like Wednesday, I'll be up and running. Okay. Mea culpa, those are all my apologies for the morning.
Well, thanks for coming.
Oh, no.
I'm busy.
I agreed to come long before this move was scheduled, so I was bound and determined to arrive here. I've got a car full of boxes and computers and stuff that I didn't want the movers to move. But you know what? We're here for an hour, so let's do it. So a little bit of background on me. I was born in Chicago. My family, and I'm 59, so you don't have to do any math in this, even though I'm going to talk about money. We moved to Arizona in 1959 to Cattle Ranch in a place called, outside a place called Seligman. 3 families owned a 40,000 acre ranch. And I thought we were going to do that forever, and then we didn't. In the 60s, in the late 60s, we high school. I came down when I was 18 to the U of A, to the Honors College, and I got a degree in history with a minor in economics. And then I had a choice. Plus a year of clerking and studying for the bar exam, and the MBA I could do it in 4 semesters. So I chose the easier path because I was broke. That set my destiny. Different course in life than being a lawyer, and I went to work upon graduation for commercial banks because my specialty was finance. I worked for a legacy bank here in Arizona called Valley National Bank of Arizona. You now know it as Chase Bank here. And I ran portfolios in Phoenix, and then even though I was raised in Phoenix, having lived in Tucson for 6 years, I preferred it. So I moved down here, and I officed on the 4th floor of 2 East Congress, the Chase Bank right there on the corner, and ran portfolios again for Valley National Bank. And they were commercial portfolios. I ran professional portfolios, I ran commercial real estate portfolios, and I ran traditional commercial lending portfolios. I left after 3 years, and I went to Valley was the largest bank in the state of Arizona. In fact, it was one of the largest banks in the American West. It was an international bank. I went to Mirror Bank, which was the 2nd largest institution in the state. And I stayed until RTC started to threaten to shut it down, which they finally did. More on the commercial real estate side. With a sweep of the pen, Congress basically shut down the savings industry nationwide by causing a recalculation of their equity. The industry was not fragile and it didn't need a recalculation of equity, but they did it anyway, and it forced everyone into default. In order to accommodate that default and, quote, protect the federal taxpayers, they created an institution called Resolution Trust Corporation, RTC, and I went to work for them because they were the only game to go to. And I was part of a takedown team that traveled, took down financial institutions, in a day wiped out the board of directors and wiped out the stockholders' position. Took over, sold the assets, tried to repackage the liabilities and get out of the deal as fast as we could. I was probably one of the most unpopular women in Arizona for a while there. I was taking everybody's property away from it and reallocating wealth, basically, and selling it again. I worked for the Arizona State Land Department Board of Appeals. I chaired it for 5.5 years, which is a gubernatorial appointment with a full Senate confirmation and vote required. And we governed the Arizona state lands, the over $9 million acres of Arizona state lands that are owned by the State Land Trust, which is not really owned by the people of Arizona. It's formed to protect 14 beneficiaries, going back to land grant and territorial days. Chief among that is part of the money that the governor wants to reallocate right now. You'll read more about that as the elections come up in the fall. Not a fan of it, by the way, but that's as political as I'll get. So today we're going to talk about access to capital. And what I will say, I'm going to start with a premise, and that is that it is, and Tony's kind of set me up for this conversation because he's heard me speak before. It is really sexy to talk about angel investors and venture capital. We probably, many of us watch Shark Tank with those, gasping moments like, are they going to take the deal? What deal? Like, why are these people so mean? I always watch it. It's like, really? But there's they have to make it dramatic so they can sell advertising. The truth is, most conversations about money are very, very quiet. They're done in a voice just above a whisper, and there's almost no drama in it. While that kind of funding is sexy and it has certain attractions to it, in the world of financing worldwide, it's about this much of what's available. Everything else is debt financing. They're going to a commercial lender or they're borrowing private money commercial. So when you're talking about venture capital and angel investors, what you're saying is you're going to give up a piece of your business forever, and in return you're going to get free money. Well, it wasn't free. You gave up a piece of your business, and you may have given up a controlling piece of your business. Your business that you started, someone else is now going to make decisions. And they're going to push back when you want to do something and they don't agree with it. And their goal is to get out of your business in 5 to 7 years to sell your share of it and their share for what they hope is a 10 times minimum return on equity. 10 times return, ROI. Those kinds of investors tend to invest in a lot of different things. It's like a horse race. They pick 8 horses or 8 companies, let's say as an example. They invest in all of them and they hope that one of them will go big. That they can drive the former controlling owner to go big and make it. And they know that the rest of them may never get off the ground. So when you're talking about investment, and we've talked about balance sheets and income statements already. Yeah. Okay, so I'm on the balance sheet right now. You've got assets, things that you own, liabilities, things that you owe, and the difference, assets minus liabilities, is owner's equity, right? Equity means investment. Investment means you are not entitled to your money back, ever. You are not entitled to anything except a share of the profits or the losses of a business. Some people want their businesses to lose money. They want the tax write-off to offset other income from revenue sources that they have in other parts of their lives. The classic example is the Santa Rita Mountains. Santa Rita Mountains, all around it, used to be very, very large cattle ranches, the Camilla Ranch, the Baca Float, big, big, big ranches, right? And they broke them all up because there's more money to be made in subdivisions, and they built things like Green Valley and started selling 40-acre units along the road to Sonoita on the other side of the mountains. Many, not all of the people who bought those little 40-acre parcels, which are what I would call mini ranches, you really can't run. You really can't make money on 40 acres running cattle. There's just no way. It's going to lose money. But they were bought by people who wanted them to lose money. Wealthy attorneys, wealthy physicians, wealthy individuals here in southern Arizona, or others who wanted to sort of play cattle rancher. And they ran a little bit of a herd, and they hired somebody to come in and work it part-time, 10 hours a week, you know, maybe a crew during spring and fall when you've got to actually do stuff to cattle. And they used those losses to offset the tremendous income that they were making in urban environments. Okay, so everyone doesn't want to make money. That's an interesting premise, isn't it? Some things are designed to lose money for tax reasons. The point is, when you go to investors, the word investor, and you are all investors in your own business, means that let's step away from investors. Let's step away from angel. Let's step away from venture capital. Let's take off on our entrepreneurial hat. And I'm going to have you think like a commercial banker, because that's how my head works. There are lots of ways to borrow money besides, you know, the investment side is over here. When you're borrowing money, you're in the liability part of the balance sheet. When you borrow money, you have an agreement. You have a contract to pay. It is not an option not to pay on that promissory note. It is a contractual obligation that can be enforced in superior or federal court. It becomes a legal matter, okay? So back to equity. Free isn't so free. You may no longer control your business. You may not pass your business to the next generation, right? You paid some price. And the decisions that others make in your business that you've given up a percentage ownership in may affect the course of that business in a way that you don't particularly like. When you borrow money, the borrowers don't get to control the business because they don't own any of it. In fact, there's a thing called lender liability litigation that says that commercial lenders cannot try and control the business. They cannot make business decisions for you. But you have a contract to pay. If you don't pay, they'll enforce it in the courts. There are tiers of money. Tony, is this clock correct?
Yes.
Okay. There are tiers of money that you can borrow. First tier, and I'm going to tier them by cost, by actual cost, but not necessarily financial cost. The first tier of money is what they call FF&F money. You've probably heard this term already in class. Friends, family, and fools, right? Great Aunt Mary in Ohio loves the business you're starting in Tucson and says, of course, baby, I'll give you $40,000, right? And you're like, what are you going to charge me, Aunt Mary? She says, just pay me when you pay me. Give me a smooch. I love you. Okay?
You have her number?
Yeah. It could be a smaller dollar amount, but here's the rub. Your brother finds out about Aunt Mary loaning you with no terms the money and says, that's not right. Aunt Mary didn't do that for me. Other family members are irritated. Then you tell Aunt Mary something like, you know, I'll pay you by Christmas, or I'll pay you a third of it by Christmas, but you don't. And Aunt Mary calls you up and says, you're not invited to Thanksgiving anymore. There is a price to borrowing from friends and family. It's a psychological price. It can break relationships. Okay? Under the law, if you borrow cash and it's on a handshake and I'll promise I pay you every month, okay, that's a gift. They're verbal. If you sign something, it's enforceable. This is important for you personally, if you borrow personally, or if you borrow as an organization. There are gifts and there are loans, and they are not the same thing. They're not reported the same way, and honestly, if it's a gift, the cash comes in, there's no offsetting liability. It's a boon to your business if you can get gift money, even if you did it on a handshake. Okay. So that's your cheapest money, but with your highest probably psychological cost. There is a price to pay. Money is never free. Now let's go into what I would call more traditional lending. You walk into Chase, Wells, Tucson Federal Credit Union, some financial institution that does commercial lending. And you say, I want to borrow $50,000, or I want to borrow $1 million. I don't know what you guys want to borrow. And they say, well, you need a business plan, and financial projections, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And then we'll look at the whole thing. And so you go home and you create all this stuff and flash drives and binders and da-da-da-da-da, and you go back in and you push it across the desk to the lender. In the wrong place. I used to do this lecture, and I don't really do this anymore, but I would go around the room and I would say, who do you know at the bank? Who's your favorite banker? And people would raise their hand and they go, Miranda. What does Miranda do? Well, she works at the Elkhorn branch at Bank of America. And what does she do in the branch? She's my favorite teller. She's the only person I know at the bank. I know the new accounts person. I love Henry. He's awesome. Those people can't help you. People that you want to talk to are in offices. They're not in branches. You know how you walk into the branch and then there's all that stuff upstairs? That's where you want to be, upstairs talking to somebody. They may force you down to the branch, but start up as high as you can. You want to be talking to a bank officer, not a bank employee. Banks are organized very much the way the American military is. Officers, enlisted people. Your enlisted people cannot do anything out of the box. They have to follow the playbook of the bank all the time. They can't bend the rules. They can't look at a deal. They can't custom underwrite. Oh, and by the way, nobody that you're talking to is an underwriter. You may be talking to a senior vice president, and the title is Senior Vice President of Commercial Lending. They are not an underwriter. They will not make the decision on your deal. Underwriting in Wichita, Kansas is going to make that decision. They are the liaison between you and the bank. Okay? So you walk in and you talk to some senior VP here in Tucson, in the office, upstairs. That decision is not made at his desk or her desk. Okay? I worked for Bank of America. That was the last, I worked for them twice, silly me. First time I ran a wealth building portfolio, and you had to have a $2 million cash investable net worth in a portfolio. And I was what they call dual license. I was licensed for stocks, bonds, mutual funds, like Series 7 trading on Bank of America Inc. side. And then on Bank of America NA, the traditional bank, I was licensed to do banking worldwide. So you wanted to buy condos in Dubai, I could do that for you. You wanted to do investment in Malaysia, I could do that for you too. Great job, super stressful, great job. Second time I worked for them, I ran what's called a government products portfolio, which was an SBA 504 portfolio. It's used for commercial real estate. And I ran it for most of the state. Bank of America pays well on these kinds of jobs, but your stress level is off the chart, and you work 7 days a week. So they pay you for like being a crazy person. Okay, so you've got your traditional bank money. You know that the person that you're talking to is not an underwriter, and you will never meet the person who's making your loan decisions. Never meet the person. My underwriter was in Wichita. My underwriter had never been to Arizona, and yet was underwriting all the transactions that I was trying to push through the loan system. It's not happening here in Tucson anymore. Very few people underwrite in Tucson.
What about the local banks?
They underwrite in Tucson, but they have really tight criteria. If you go to say something like Bank of Tucson, their criteria is very difficult. It's relatively difficult to get a loan there. Okay. Commercial banks are owned by stockholders. You might say, oh, I'll never own a share of stock of Bank of America or Wells Fargo or Bank of Tucson, but if you have a mutual fund, you may own stock in it and you don't even know. And as a stockholder, what do you want? You want two things as a stockholder. You want one share of Bank of America stock. And remember, these stocks are traded worldwide. People in Malaysia and Nigeria own Bank of America stock. So what do they want? And the Americans that own it. They want quarterly dividends. And they want the stock prices to constantly go up. That's how they get their return on investment. And the only way a bank can do that is to only make good loans. They make bad loans, losses, and their investors start selling their stock. Nobody's happy. So when a bank is lending money, they're not lending ownerless wealth. They're lending the money of their stockholders, the money of their bondholders worldwide. And they're lending people who deposit. They're lending that money as well. All those people say, screaming at the bank psychologically, don't make bad loans, don't do risky deals. That means that most commercial banks don't want to talk to a business until it's 2 years in business. By that, they mean you file 2 federal tax returns on your business. For a startup or an early stage business, this is a deal killer. It means you can't get money out of banks. The other thing that you need to know about banks is for startups, they're usually looking for 20 to 25% cash in. That means that if you are starting up or early stage, they look at your whole project to sell to your first customer, all your costs. You say, I want 100% financing, and they say, maybe 80, maybe 75%. The rest of it, you need to come up with cash. So to play with the big commercial banks, it takes cash to play. The money is the cheapest money. Behind the psychological friends, family, and fools, it's the cheapest money on the market, on the lending side, on the liability side. The thing about it is, and I want you to always think about this, if you can't access the money, this is where people start to get super frustrated and go, no bank will lend to me. Well, there's a couple of things that can help you. One, it helps to have a tour guide like me for free, because you may not be talking to the right bank or the right banker, or you may not have characterized your business in the way that's compelling where they feel safe to lend. Because the whole conversation that we're having here for this hour is only about 2 things from the banker's perspective. It's about cash, and it's about risk. Because commercial bankers go to school and they know about Renaissance art and the hydrology of the Santa Cruz River. We know all this groovy, cool stuff because you take all these classes. And then you go to work for a commercial bank and they start squeezing your brain really hard. Your cerebral cortex is back here. It's where your primitive fight or flight, drink water or you're going to die. That's where that lives, right? This is higher level thinking up here. And the bank starts squeezing your brain when you start getting trained to lend commercial money. And they're like, we don't want you to think about Renaissance art anymore. Or should I buy a Prius? No. We want you to think about cash and risk all day long. How much cash is in the deal, because that helps protect the bank. How much cash flow can be generated, because only cash repays loans. If they took collateral and they have to convert it, they have to convert it to cash. The promissory note says paid in US dollars. It doesn't say paid in earrings. Cash and risk. So that's what, if you're going to try and borrow money, that's what you need to be thinking about too. Think like a bank. When an underwriter looks at deals, I'm older, so I still looked at paper deals when I was underwriting for Bank of America. I had a really, really long desk. It was like as long as 2 of these desks. And I'd walk in the morning and there'd be like 8 to 10 deals in piles down my desk. And by the end of the day, I would have decisioned all of them. It was my job to find the least risky deal in the pile and see if I could craft a loan that felt safe to the bank. That means searching for money is competitive. Other people are looking. If yours is the least risky deal, that's the deal that's going to get approved. So how you characterize yourself, this is super distracting, by the way. Why do you put them there? Oh my God, no, not until it's over. I'll have brown teeth and I'll be a train wreck. Okay. So the thing that I want you to remember is that you're competing with other businesses to get funding. Now they're hiding. Oh, this is great. I was a Girl Scout till I was 15. My mother was my granny troop. Okay, so anyway, let's all think about that when we're thinking about banks. There are other tiers of money for early stage businesses or businesses who have had some issues. You might look at SBA loans. SBA lending is something that is not always fully understood by the American public. It's what they call government guaranteed product lending. It's a specialty in commercial lending. Most commercial banks do it. Some do it well, some do it extremely poorly. When you are looking for an SBA loan, you want to go to what's known as a preferred lender. They won't tell you they're a preferred lender. You have to ask. And if you ask the person in the branch, they won't know.
Who are the preferred lenders in Tucson? Do you know?
Let me tell you what preferred lenders are, and then I'll give you a short list, okay? Everybody else is a non-preferred lender. Non-preferred lenders can do exactly the same deals as preferred lenders, but it takes longer because they have to double underwrite. So let's go back. I will remember your question.
Yeah,
so let's go back to the premise. What is an SBA loan? Everybody says it, but people don't always really fundamentally understand it. The bank is lending its own money. It's lending its investor and its depositor money. It's going at risk. It doesn't like the deal. And so it says, I want a guarantee, I want some kind of insurance on this deal so that if things go downhill and this deal defaults and doesn't pay, I can draw on an insurance policy. Insurance policy that we're going to draw on is the SBA, the Small Business Administration. SBA will guarantee somewhere between 50 and 85% on a loan that a bank might want to make. Preferred lenders, right? So this is a way of, remember, risk cash. This is a way of splitting risk with SBA. But who funds SBA? Federal taxpayer. So when the loan defaults and doesn't pay, all of you are paying for it. The bank's not taking the hit. The bank's only going at risk for somewhere between 50 and 15%. They like it when they get 85% guarantees. So do smart stockholders of Bank of America stock. They are shifting the risk to you. Okay? So even on SBA, if you're smart and you are paying federal taxes, you don't want the SBA guaranteeing deals that are weak. This whole thing is about risk. And it's all going to come back to you in the end, yes.
But if you get an SBA loan, how fast are you supposed to start repaying that, like right away?
Usually your first payment's within 45 days. Yeah, that's just a structure thing, yeah. So there are two kinds of lenders. The first kind of lender, and by the way, the bank still takes a hit. They can't recover from SBA unpaid accrued interest, unpaid accrued fees, and the cost of collections. The lawyers, the loan officers who have to run around trying to find collateral, paying an auctioneer to auction it off. They can't recover any of those costs. SBA is only insuring a certain percentage of the outstanding principal balance on a daily basis. And as it declines, the percentage stays the same. Okay. Two kinds of preferred. So preferred and unpreferred. A preferred lender is one who does a high enough volume on an annual basis with a low enough draw on insurance that they're allowed to underwrite on their own. And SBA rubber stamps their underwriter. Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Chase Bank, these are preferred lenders in the system. If they say, yes, it's approved, it's a go, SBA rubber stamps their decision.
So just those three?
Those are the main three.
Okay.
Arizona Commerce Bank, National Bank of Tucson is a preferred lender. Okay. Arizona Commerce Bank, Bank of Tucson, Tucson Federal Credit Union, for the most part, non-preferred lenders. That doesn't mean they can't do it for you. That means that they underwrite it, decide that they want to do it, and then it goes through second underwriting with SBA. It just takes longer. Yes.
And I have another question too about the SBA liens, because I think I might have some dated information. Did they not used to do like a blanket lien on all of your personal assets as well, rather than just the company assets, or is that no longer the case? Or
SBA's rules now, as they stand, require that they take all available collateral.
Right. So even, so when you are
Personal
doing an SBA loan, you are actually putting every asset that you have in the deal. Except for your home?
You need to, okay. New topic.
Okay.
There are 4 key documents that are used for any commercial loan.
Mm-hmm.
Promissory note, we've all signed those, credit card promissory notes, car loan, house mortgage, whatever. The loan agreement, which contains ancillary agreements besides the promissory note agreements. The personal guarantee, which puts you on the hook personally regardless, and no one will lend without it. And the 4th document in this case is called a security agreement. Security agreement is where all forms of collateral are listed, including blanket liens. That's what allows them to perfect collateral with motor vehicle, with Uniform Commercial Code, all these other places where they publicly announce they've got a lien on certain assets, either personally and or for business. So SBA's rules are they have to take all available collateral, period.
Right. So in structuring, and the reason why I ask this is for people who either are looking to maybe buy a home or own a home and want to refinance it or do whatever, because if you want to do anything with any of your personal property from that point forward, the SBA has to be involved because they've got the first lien position on any of your assets.
They don't necessarily have the first lien position.
Okay.
They may take second.
They may take second because you're obviously, if you own a home already, there's somebody else who's already in the first position.
Right. And if you need to refinance that first position for whatever reason, to lower the rate or to lower the payment, the SBA is probably in second position anyway, and they can. They have to make a risk decision.
Yeah, so you have to go through that will impact your ability to refinance or do anything with your other assets. In fact, true, and I was like, I don't think your information is correct.
Right, but anybody in second position would require that.
It's just you have to go through the SBA process, which could be a little bit lengthier than just going to your local credit union and saying, hey, I'm going to put another note on my car. It's a little bit of a different story than.
Well, you can put notes on behind SBA, whatever you want to.
Right,
but if you want to, if they're in second on your house,
right,
and you want to refinance the first, you're going to need a bureau because they're going to have to subordinate again, to that new first lien. Traditional bank lending, you've got SBA, which is really an inducement for the bank to make a loan that they would normally decline for risk. Remember, on SBA lending, the feds don't get to set the terms or the interest rate. The bank does, because the bank's lending its investors money. Banks are not controlled up there. It's one of the most highly controlled industries in the United States, but it's still privately owned. There's only one publicly owned bank, or not government-owned bank in the United States, and that's the Federal Reserve, the national bank.
They would typically decline those loans.
Which loans?
The SBA loans, the bank would.
I'm confused.
I thought you said that they would, it allows them to offer loans that they typically would.
Yes, because it allows them to split risk with the federal taxpayers, with you, whether you like it or not.
Okay. So, and I've got a question too, and I don't know, and if it's not part of your presentation, I can ask it later, but in terms of the terms, because the length of the term is generally pretty standard stuff, but in terms of the rates, how
the banks get to set the rates.
Right, exactly. So are they sort of publishing here's tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 rates, or is that really defined on each particular deal?
It's all custom underwriting based on risk.
For this particular, for every deal is still
every
unique.
Commercial.
They don't.
They do internal risk profiling on every bank, on every loan, and they set rate based on that. But it's not published.
No, it's not published. It's proprietary, right? Exactly. But they do still have their. And is it just 3 tiers generally still today, or is it?
Every bank is structured differently.
It's
not something that's standardized. Banks underwrite the way they want to.
Yeah, pretty much their deal. Okay.
They're not allowed to have discriminatory practices based on gender or race or ethnicity or religion or anything like that. And they're not allowed to redline districts anymore. Say this neighborhood's too poor, we won't lend there. That's all illegal.
Right.
But But that's discrimination based on things that the Constitution and the Bill of Rights don't allow.
No, it was more like
They
trying
can
to-
discriminate based on risk, and they should.
Right.
Yeah.
No, it's big, but for me, it's, and I don't mean to throw this term around, in an inappropriate way, but it's kind of like some of the lenders out there that are kind of on the usury side of rates. You know what I mean? Where the rates are becoming a little, like.
Well, I'm going to talk about rate here in a minute.
Okay.
Let's finish tiers
Sure.
of lending, and then
Okay.
I'm going to talk about rate, because rate is not always what we think it is.
Right.
It's sometimes it's sometimes kind of an interesting conversation. I'm glad you brought it up though, because I will include it now.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so we talked about SBA lending, and it can be a really good option, but understand why it exists. It exists because if there's a loss, you, the taxpayer, you'll pay a penny of it, trust me. And it allows the bank to split risk, which is what they want to do. Okay.
So do they not would a bank, are they only doing those loans because they're required by the?
No, they're doing it because they can make money at very little risk.
And
They have an insurance policy.
And traditionally, do they make money on those loans?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, there must be a higher percentage that default on those than.
Yes, because they are riskier. They are weaker loans. They're weaker loans from the day.
Commercial realtor, and we mentioned an SBA loan, and I could tell wasn't into that.
It takes more time, and he wants to close because he doesn't get his broker's fee until he closes.
So that's it.
Well, that's his perspective. I'd like to do a 60-day closing. I don't want to do a 90-day closing. I want to get this done. But if you can't find money his way, then you may need to use an SBA product. You can talk to me afterwards because I can maybe.
Actually, Rick was going to have you talk to me.
Oh, Rick came up there. A referral from an earlier speaker. Okay, so
I
there's.
have a question.
That's Jerome. He doesn't like that.
Oh, hello.
Go ahead, Jerome.
Where
Hi.
are you? There it is.
Here's the camera.
This is the camera. Jerome, can you see me?
Yeah, I can see you.
Okay. I didn't know. Oh, this is so cool. What is your question?
For the SBA loans, do they mostly focus on looking at your business credit score or your personal credit score?
Well, if you've been in business long enough to have a credit score, but and this is a good question, the first threshold on any commercial loan is your personal credit score and your personal credit report. Okay? And the banks tier that again for risk because credit scores and credit reports indicate risk of an individual. And the way you handle your personal credit, is also the way you'll probably handle your business credit. So it's an indicator of future risk. So one of the things that you might want to do is pull your personal credit report. You can do it for free once a year on a website sponsored by the federal government called www.annualcreditreport.com. When you go to that page, this is a function of the U.S. Department of Commerce, it'll give you a choice agency, pull TransUnion, Experian, or Equifax. If you've never looked at a credit report before, I would say pull the TransUnion because it's the most user-friendly for reading. It uses the least amount of jargon, it's color-coded, it's fairly easy to understand. Experian and Equifax, very similar reporting, not as easy to read the report. Okay? FICO scores. You want to have a FICO score. It depends on what tier of money you're trying to get. If you want first tier money, no government guarantee, no SBA or USDA guarantee on it, you probably want your FICO score to be over 700. Not just you, anyone who owns 20% or more of your business. So if you're in business with your brother-in-law, and you and your brother-in-law are both married people, legally married, then all four need those FICO scores.
When you say first tier, you're not talking about friends, you're talking about banks.
I'm talking about banks.
Thank you, sir.
And to clarify, Karen, you did say since it's a common law state, right, we take into account our income of our spouses.
Yes, and they will pull FICO and credit reports on spouses. Anyone who owns 20% or more of the enterprise and any marital community, both parties. So if you're checking, for the first time in your life, maybe you're checking your credit report, you may want to have your spouse. You can't pull one for someone else. The government doesn't know whether you are or not, but legally you're not supposed to. They have to pull their own. One caveat on pulling these reports is lock them up. If you print them out or save them on your desktop, or whatever you do, make sure that you've got some protection. Do not leave a printed report on the top of your desk at home. Do not throw it on the seat next to you in your pickup truck and wander off to go grocery shopping, because if it is stolen, it is the perfect vehicle for identity theft. Protect your data. You need to look at it. You probably want to print it out. I would suggest that you do, but lock it up. Don't leave it out, okay? All right, and if you've got it on a computer on your desktop or somewhere in your computer, make sure you've got some kind of lock on your computer so that anybody who breezes by can't go in there and start looking around. There's another tier of money, and that's alternative lending. And as we're going down the tiers, the rates are increasing because the risk is increasing, right? Alternative lending, and there are 3 alternative lenders that operate here in Tucson. One of them is more active than the other 2. We work with all 3 of them at my office. They charge higher interest rates. They offer longer terms. And they are more liberal in their underwriting. So say you've had a bankruptcy, foreclosure, deed in lieu of foreclosure in the past couple of years, a bad divorce that blew up your credit, to look at it where the banks are. Alternative lenders, the ones that I work with are all nonprofits. There are no stockholders. They're registered with the U.S. government. They are 501c3s. They have some kind of social justice mission, usually. And we actually take a fair number of people to them because that's where we can get the money. Now, having said all of that, I want to talk about interest rates.
Okay. Is it Axion, and who are the?
Prestamo Small Business Lending, which is a subsidiary of Chicanos por la Casa.
Okay.
And I'm trying to think who is my 3rd lender here in town. Oh, PPAP, Project PAP.
What about IDA?
IDA lends, they lend through Business Development Finance Corporation. And I sit on there, I'm a voting member of that. I sit on the book. So yes, IDA funds are sometimes available, but you have to go a different route. They won't lend direct. They lend through another agency. Okay? And there are 2 IDAs in Tucson. There's the City of Tucson IDA and there's the Pima County IDA. Where IDA means Industrial Development Authority. Okay? We talked a lot about SBA guarantees. There's also what they call USDA, United States Department of Agriculture guarantees. So depending on what your venue is and what your venture is, you can also go after USDA funds. And I live really close to Rincon Market. I'm in the neighborhood, so I see your setup. Yeah, good. All right, so there are these other lenders. Now I'm going to talk about interest rates a little bit. Let's take, what is a bank interest rate? What is prime, for example? When people talk about prime and they just sort of throw that number around, they're talking about Wall Street Journal prime, okay? They call it SWJ prime. Wall Street Journal prime is a poll of all the prime rates of large national lenders smooshed together 5 days a week and published in the Wall Street Journal. If you have a floating interest rate, it may float against Wall Street Journal prime, which is a published rate. But banks have their own prime rates. Everyone doesn't use Wall Street Journal prime. And prime rate doesn't mean it's the best rate in the bank. It's a benchmark rate, and some banks change it every single day. Okay. Here's the thing about interest rates. If you look at the interest rate and ignore the amortization schedule on the loan, you will never get a good deal. Bankers are honest. They're honest for the most part because the federal government forces them to. If you're an officer in a federally insured financial institution, an FDIC, Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, bank, you do something that's really out of the box, you go to federal prison. It's not a joke. If you're an unlisted person, it's not such a severe sanction. But if you're an officer, you've got a certain amount of pressure on you all the time not to screw up. If you focus only on interest rate, you will miss the best negotiating points of the loan. So here's what I hear from clients. Okay, the banks won't lend to me. We can't get an SBA loan. My great Aunt Mary in Ohio hates me. What else can I do? Let's go to the alternative lenders. What's it going to cost me? 14%. I won't pay it. No, you will. By the way, don't go there with me. Okay, so it sounds awful. 14% just sounds awful, and 18% sounds worse, and 22% sounds like I think I'm going to just, like, what am I doing? Don't focus on the rate, especially for deals under $50,000. No. Focus on the amortization schedule and whether or not you can make the monthly payment. I can run amortization schedules for you, and I can show you how to do them yourselves because it's a really powerful tool. If you focus on rate and don't run your amortization schedules, you don't know what you're really paying. I can talk about it, and I can print these for you if you ever want me to. 8% rate, that's kind of 7 to 8% is a bank lending rate on not too long a term deal. 7 or 8%, right? $10,000, 5 years, fully amortizing, equal principal and interest, equal payment every month, kind of like a car loan. 60th month, paid them all on the first of the month, car's paid off, lien's taken off your title, okay? 60 months, let's say 7%, $10,000. I can double the interest rate to 14, and that monthly payment will not change $100. You will pay 14% because you have to make the decision based on the marginal payment. Can you afford another $100 a month? Yes, then you can afford 14%. Don't balk at the interest rate. The thing that has the biggest impact on term loans where you're making monthly payments, is time. How many months? So if the bank comes back and says, we'll do it for 24 months, you say, can I have it for 48? And yes, I will pay 14%. If you argue only rate, the banker goes, ha, 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 and laughs up their sleeve. You are looking at the wrong number. Here's another example. Tony's heard me do this before. I do this when I speak publicly. One morning I wake up. This is a true story. I'm married to a guy named Pedro. I have lived with Pedro for more than 30 years. We have a family, we have an adobe house, we're those people, Barrio Volvo people. And I wake up one morning in an old 1936 house with a bathroom that's like the size of a, and I'm wet and I've got my towel on, and it is not a good strategy for a middle-aged woman to weigh themselves first thing in the morning, because it can it can color the day dark, But me, no care.
And wet, no less.
Yeah, wet, extra. Shake that baby out. So this isn't about matching people without clothes on, but I fling off my towel in optimism. It's 6 o'clock in the morning. It's dark. It's winter, right? And I go, there's a scale. By golly, yes, today is the day. And I step on the scale, and it says, whatever it says, 165 pounds. Step on the scale. That's not a problem. Step back, 165 pounds. It's a dark day. I am ordering the sun not to rise. Magically, 5 pounds of husband walks around the corner. He's got a towel around his waist. He's out of the shower. He lays on his towels. Now we're both flying off our towels. And he says, babe, you look upset. My husband is always happy. He whistles at 5:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, because he worked construction for years, so he's like a whistler in the morning, super noisy. I'm like not a morning person, so it's not a good metric between us. And he's like, oh, you don't look happy, what's good? Get on the scale and see if it's right. My husband's, they stop on scale, 180, yeah. I go, what? No, it's off. He goes, yeah, no, it's still 180, it's right. I'm just like torqued. I go, I gained 5 pounds. He goes, you know, you look fine, your clothes fit, you're healthy. 5 pounds is a 2-week project, no more Girl Scout cookies for you. His class is half full all the time. Me, I'm crabby over 5 pounds. The number never meant anything. It never meant a thing. If you golf, go out there with 3 friends, you have a great day on the course, but you shoot like 99 or something, just some horrific day. It wasn't a bad day. No, it was a great day on the course, out in the sun with your friends, or with you in the clubhouse. It's all good, right? If you just focus on the number of your interest rate and you don't run your amortization schedules, do them yourself, don't make the banker do it for you so you can prove it to yourself, and look at what that monthly payment is going to be, because it's the only thing that really matters. One little hint. So I gave you first hint. Don't just argue rate, run your amortization schedules. Number 2, try not to sign loans that have prepayment penalties. If you want to pay it off early, or you want to make an extra, you have a really big month, you want to drop another $1,000 to that loan, you want the right to do it.
Do banks actually still put contracts where you have prepayment penalties?
Yes, especially on home equity lines of credit.
Really?
Absolutely. And
It seems so antiquated. I mean, that's
stare-
like a
they
finance company
They also
thing.
do it on SBA 504 loans.
Really?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely.
That's like,
okay.
No, they want no risk. They want a nice guaranteed return no matter what.
Yeah.
Well, they've invested their money and they don't want early payoff, because if you pay off
They
early,
make less money.
if you pay off early, no, they don't necessarily make money, because now they don't get any more interest.
No, less money. Is what I said.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
But more importantly, they have to go find a borrower as good as you now. They have to search the market and replace the money.
Replace that loan, yeah.
Right?
Money doesn't sleep, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
if the money if banks can't make money without lending it.
Well, I mean, technically they can now, right?
Well, yeah. If the principal. They're not castles full of gold.
Right,
They've got to put the money out to make money, because they're transactions. They're making money on transactions.
Yeah. Well, and that is absolutely true. And I know this is not what you're coming here to say. So aside from just your payment and whatever your total cost of the borrowing the money is, regardless of how many years, because what I think you're saying is the longer the term or whatever is what really controls your cost of money.
Lower payment.
The lower the payment, but
You need is more.
right.
Well,
Well,
it's not.
Told me once, which really changed my whole perspective on interest rate, is how much money are you going to make with that money? So if you're really looking at what's the use of that money. So if you're really worried about the 14% interest rate, and it's whatever the APR or whatever turns out to be in the long run, how much are you able to produce with the injection of those funds? You have to factor that in, because it really actually doesn't really lower your cost per se, but.
Right. If you have, I see you, Amanda. If you have a really large loan, rate matters.
Right.
But if we're talking about small loans,
Mm-hmm.
50,000 and under loans, I wouldn't be focused on rate.
Right.
I wouldn't. It's not. Focus on your amortization schedule. Argue for longer terms.
Mm-hmm.
Argue for no prepayment penalties. You can get people will come to me and say, should I get a 15-year mortgage because I can afford it? No. Get a 30-year mortgage.
Mm-hmm.
Make extra payments every month. You control the amortization schedule. You pay it off in 15 years. But don't force yourself to have that payment that's a struggle.
Right.
Because it's good, if that payment's good for you today, and next month your husband loses his job or your kid gets diagnosed with something horrible, and now that payment's stressful. Take your long amortization schedules and you control it instead of them.
And on
Okay.
commercial lending, it's still pretty much the standard 20 years is the maximum term that they're gonna give you on.
You can only get 20 years on commercial real estate.
Right. But any other kind of commercial, I mean, like for business loans that are, let's say 50,000, I mean, they're not going 20 years on
No.
something. Right, there's like 10 years, right? Maximum 5 years?
Depends on the collateral.
Depends on the collateral. Okay. So what's the average term then these days? Let's say 50,000.
It's all custom underwritten.
Right.
So they can go, most lenders can go, it depends on what your collateral is. If it's accounts receivable, it'll be a 1-year revolving line
Right,
of credit.
1 year, yeah.
If it's inventory, it'll be, again, a really short term. Because at the top of the balance sheet, they're current assets.
Right.
If you're financing long-term assets, you can start to get those longer terms.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's small.
So if it's
small
vehicles,
terms.
it's like 5 to 7 years for vehicles. If you're buying like, 2 delivery vans or something like that. But if you want 20 years, it's commercial real
It's
estate.
real estate is the only thing that's going to that long.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I was gonna say, first of all, Karen has actually helped my business get a loan because we do government contracting, and you think it'd be easy if you had a really good contract to get loan on money, but it's not. So when she says free services, all in all, she'll hold up your hand for the whole process. But I was more importantly hoping you would tell us the happy-go-lucky, feel-good story about the 2 gentlemen and the wine company and how long it took to get their loan and how you helped them, because it was a success recently, correct?
Okay, 3 actually, yeah. There's a company that operates a vineyard, winery, and soon distillery. They're installing 3 stills from Germany as we speak. They're building a barrel house and a distillery as well, down in Elgin, Arizona. And
Finally,
do you know them?
yeah, I do. Well, I someone they just hired was telling me about their distillery on the way, so that's why I had.
Yeah, yeah. And we did the financing for them. Big USDA guarantee, 85% guaranteed financing. Very large project. But they came to us, and I think it took us, I don't even remember.
2 to 3 years?
Yeah, it took us years to put the financing together. We searched all over the place, but
What was the amount?
I can't discuss it
Oh,
because
but-
it's theirs.
yeah,
It's
okay.
their
It
price.
was large enough, but it was an agriculture loan, right? Which was.
It was a multi-million-dollar loan. Let's put it that way.
Perfect, okay.
Okay. And it just took a really long time to put together. It got done, and it allowed them to refinance old debt, which was on really short amortization schedules. Not good for them. Too much pressure on their cash flow. But it also allowed them to do this big expansion and to expand their vineyards as well.
So you're intimate with that, obviously, because you work with them. So how did they survive the time frame from when they applied to when they actually got the loan? Like, did they need the loan or?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. 2 of the 3 owners work full-time and run the business full-time. So they work 80 to 100-hour weeks. One works for, they have aeronautical engineering degrees. They're from, you probably know this, they were all 3 friends their freshman year at the U.S. Air Force Academy. I'm not telling you anything that isn't on their website, so that's okay. So they're all aeronautical engineers. They all did full tours and then they got out, and they had 2 of them had an agricultural background in their family, so they decided to, acquire vineyards. They didn't buy vineyards. They actually took raw land and created vineyards. Which is the hard way because you don't get any fruit for 3 years. It's 3 years of losses minimum. They did a couple of interesting things. One works for Tucson Medical Center full-time as an IT guy and is very well paid for that. One works for Raytheon, the Jet Propulsion Lab, as an aeronautical engineer and a test pilot for them. The 3rd one is full-time with the Vineyard Winery. So they have other sources of income, plus they have their military retirement, and one of them is a service-disabled fighter pilot, and so he has his disability on top of that. And they just keep, they're not wealthy, they just keep throwing money and they keep feeding the losses because they have to. When you're doing a vineyard winery and you're going to do a state-grown wine, which is premium, wine, Estate grown means that you own the vineyards and you make wine only out of your own grapes. You don't buy outside grapes to supplement.
Which is rare. Most of them buy grapes. And
right, which is why the wine is a premium product, because they control it all the way through the line. They also have 5 tasting rooms, so they also control almost all of their retail sales. They do very little through distributors. It's more lucrative if they sell it themselves direct than it is if they use the distributor and have the distributor take the cut. So they lose profit out of every bottle with the distributor. All wine companies operate that way. But yeah, I mean, as an example, you plant the vine. First of all, you've got to acquire the land. Then you've got to dig, the 1,000-foot well where they are. Then you've got to test the water quality. You've got to amend the soil. You've got to put in all these huge commercial trellising systems, the drip irrigation, the weeding, this, that, and the other. You stick the vines in the ground and they're bare, right? And then you have to, trellis them and train the vines and prune them. And then for the first 2 to 3 years, you prune off all the fruit and you just sell it. So you don't really get the benefit. You don't get to make wine in those years if you're doing estate grown. If you want to make wine, because what you need is the root system to fully develop. And if the plant is spending all of its energy making fruit, the root system is developing very slowly. So they took the aggressive approach. Cast off the fruit. Well, what do they have? They have no revenue for years, right? It's all losses. It's very hard to start a vineyard winery.
That's how they came up with the name?
Pardon?
Is that how they came up with the name?
Flying Leaf. Well, they all met.
Your friendship to you?
No, they all met. Yeah.
And it played off the Air Force.
They met the summer before. When you go to the Air Force Academy, if you're going to start, say, in August, you actually go to the summer program before you start as a freshman, and you do jump school. And so it's a flying leap out of a jet, right? And that's where they met. They met at jump school before they started their freshman year. So, yeah. They're an interesting, just as an aside, they're an interesting bunch. Mark Beres flew, he's the president, CEO. He flew really high-techy helicopters into what they call denied airspace, where you're not supposed to be. It's the other side. Mark Moeller flew Air Force Two for the Vice President of the United States and dignitaries and ambassadors worldwide. Tom Kitchens, the third owner, flew the big C-series planes where they jets where they can roll tanks onto them and fly them around the world. And he flew those. So they're an interesting group of people. But anyway. Okay, the last tier of money that I want to talk about is what they call hard money. It's relative to hard money lenders. I have friends who are hard money lenders. They're not bad people. This isn't mafioso kind of stuff. It's just legitimate. I mean, it always sounds like the Godfather, but you sleep with the fishes. But that's not what it is. It's just people who are willing to take really high levels of risk. They do charge more, clearly, than the tier above the alternative lenders. But if you default, they are less likely to work it out or modify the loan. They are really likely to go after the collateral very, very quickly. So let's do a little moment here. This isn't my wedding ring. I quit wearing my wedding ring years ago because my fingers got too fat. So this is a different ring. But let's say one day I decide, gosh, I really need money. And here's my collateral, right? And I'm going to walk into someplace and I'm going to say, hey, this ring's worth $100. I choose and I go, yeah, it's white gold. Okay, what will you give me for it? 30. Where am I standing?
What pawn shop?
I am in a pawn shop. They are collateral lenders. Commercial banks are not collateral lenders. I repeat, be a commercial banker with me. They are not collateral lenders. They don't want your collateral back. It is too much work. It's a legal process. They have to find it if you hid it from them. They're making something wrong with it, right? There's a lot of problems with taking the collateral back. And then they have to turn it into cash, because only cash replaceable note, and you know they'll sell it so fast, they'll get pennies on the dollar. They are not collateral lenders. If you walk into a commercial lender and you say, I've got $50,000 in inventory and I want to borrow $40,000 against it, they will all say no. Commercial bankers are cash flow lenders. Their primary source of repayment is the cash flow from the business. They need to see that you either have cash flow or that you have reasonable projections that indicate that there is going to be cash flow.
So if we have orders, is that reasonable?
If you have orders and you're already in production, and you've already delivered on some of them, that's reasonable.
And you have deposits on your orders.
Okay, they are cash flow lenders. Collateral is the last way. Liquidation of your collateral is the last way that they want to get paid. It is hard work to liquidate collateral. Nobody's happy. Bank doesn't want to take their people offline to do that kind of work. You don't want it to happen. And I tell you, I've done it. And it is not a good feeling at 6 o'clock in the morning to stand on the back of a long truck with an auctioneer and start auctioning off farm equipment. It's not a good feeling as a lender. Every neighbor out there is mad at you. Somebody's wife is crying. I mean, and it's dawn. But you're going to do it because you have to. When a commercial banker writes a deal up, this is what it looks like. What is the name of the business? Who are the guarantors? Next line. What is our primary source of, what is the loan for? I don't know, cash flow, support, income, whatever. What is our primary source of repayment? Cash flow from the business. They write that. Cash flow from the business is how we're going to get paid. What is our secondary source of repayment?
Personal income.
Personal guarantees. The individuals who guaranteed this loan will pay out of their own pockets from whatever sources they have. What is our third source of repayment? Liquidation of collateral. That's 3 down. We're not interested. We don't want to do that. What's our fourth source of repayment? Litigation. And I guarantee you most borrowers will immediately file bankruptcy, just so you know.
Personal assets?
Well, that would be your guarantee.
Okay.
That would be your second. Yeah, your secondary. So there are 4 ways to get the loan paid back. The first one's the easiest. There's cash flow in the business is successful. That's how the banker wants to get paid.
And I was actually going to ask you, how do they calculate your cash flow?
They all have internal systems for calculating cash flow.
Is there something that we should use to help us figure out what their...
Everybody does it their own way. What they do is most banks now do what's called global cash flow.
Global cash flow?
They do a cash flow for the individual owners who are signing guarantees and their spouses. And that is anyone who owns 20% or more of the business and their spouse. And then they do a cash flow for the business itself, either off projections or what the actuals are for the last 2 years. They combine that, and that's called a global cash flow.
So they just look at in and out on bank statements? Is that what you're saying for cash flow?
No, they're really, cash flow lives on your balance sheet. It doesn't live in your bank statement.
Right, that's what I was...
They're looking at the tops of your balance sheets. They're looking at your current asset cycle.
Because that's cash flow is a flow, and there are especially in a city that's seasonal.
Right.
So that's why the question is what are the calculators that they're using would be helpful for some of us to figure out.
What I would say is if you're doing cash flow, do cash flow projections by month. Go out 24 to 36 months with written assumptions.
Okay.
They can see it. They can adjust it to what they think. I mean, you turn in a lot of information.
Right.
Analyze it their way.
Right, exactly.
But if you make reasonable assumptions, like line item assumptions that you number, and you take those out for 36 months, and they can see seasonality if your business is affected by that, and then they can run that against what they see in your personal, usually your tax returns. They can make some judgment.
Okay.
They're not doing a lot of this off of your bank statements. They may ask for them, but they're just verifying things.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So
this is really done off your financials.
So they will. So they are willing to take your projections, even though they're going to reanalyze them.
And they may question them.
Yeah, okay.
And they may ask you to do more.
Because I've never had anyone ask me for projections, actually. They've always just taken P&Ls, balance sheets, and.
How much money were you applying for?
Oh, I don't know, various different amounts over the course of my business, but, you know, anywhere from 10,000 to 25 or 50 or something like that. So it was relatively small dollar values, but, I mean, that was the 4 years into my business, that was the first time. Your business isn't cash flowing good enough for us. I'm like, well, tell me how you got there.
Right.
Crickets, you know, like you just, it's like this nebulous, weird question that,
right.
You know, because what we think of cash flow and what others think of cash flow are very often two different things, it looks like.
They're working off your balance sheet with some income statement.
Okay.
That's how they're calculating your cash flow.
Right.
Like they're adding back in depreciation because it's a non-cash expense.
Oh, okay.
Okay, they're doing things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, should I stop? Are we there? It's 10 after.
Yes.
Yes? We're there,
If
okay.
you want help.
I can stay if you want. I don't know my phone number, I don't know my email, but I will write it on the board because I can look it up right now.
Thanks for answering all the questions along the way.
Oh, yeah, no, of course. What is your business?
I own Peaceful Spirit Massage and Wellness Centers.
Of course. My daughter goes there sometimes.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, nice.
Justin, I think is going to pitch. We'll see if he's ready. He's ready.
Okay, I think I'm there. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right, Justin, you're up.
There's certain people we have not seen come back. What happened to Brian?
Brian didn't, he had a guy, one of his drivers drop out, and he had to drive, so he doesn't have time. He's dropping out.
Oh, he's still out from it?
The reason I have to graduate 10 out of every cohort, really, to hit the contract. The reason I bring in 15 is because it takes, we usually kill off close to a third.
Who else dropped out?
Well, I had 2 drop out before we even started because of family issues. So we were down to 13. So now we're down to 12.
But Brian's the only one.
So he dropped out completely? I thought I was just missing a couple classes.
No. It does.
He's the only one who's gone.
So far. Usually public speaking shakes out another one or two.
Yeah, does it really?
Nothing to me.
How many cohorts?
Saying my name, just like,
What?
oh God.
This is the third.
I still have everything presented?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
I was like,
Public speaking course and everything,
yeah.
Have you guys just decided what you're gonna do?
The number one,
I think it's gonna be me and then John do questions.
there's no questions. There's no Q&A.
Oh, okay.
It's just 7
Because
minutes.
it's like never.
No,
official
or, yeah, I mean,
The number one skill set you can develop if you want to improve your career in business is public speaking.
yeah.
The number 2 is writing.
I mean, I'm working on it, but it's probably my,
I've been wanting.
yeah. But I've never actually.
Toastmaster.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I wanted
There's a bunch of local.
I always feel like I have to go to Toastmasters. There's a bunch of people just terrible at speaking. That's not
Is it terrible?
I don't know, but that's what I envision. I've never been.
Just like
I
everyone-
envision that I'm going to go and like slightly improve my game and just suffer through like.
It's like an open
You
mic
gotta
night.
keep learning the process for a second.
This is why I do stand-up and not improv.
It's like a,
I'm not a team player.
Well, and see, that's the thing, for me, I feel like I'm so much better at the improv part. Do I having to practice certain things is where you get all tongue-tied, you know, like, and then.
Yeah, it's just figure out one line.
You
you
know,
threw,
yeah,
or
like, but I think
Justin and I, it's only Justin.
I'm gonna practice it, because I need to practice it every time.
But I don't think that you necessarily.
Justin, what day of the week do you want to set your office hours?
No, you don't.
Right,
It just
right.
feels
Yeah.
it's relative to how much.
Is that something you can know without? Justin's gonna check his schedule after this.
Done so much teaching and public speaking, different stuff in my life.
She can.
The information is internalized. But then information isn't internalized because it's not in the way that you want to have the emotional, you want to have, you know.
Yeah.
Like I was more, Chrissy used to have me speak at BNI all the time at the visitor days because I had that ability to like pull people emotionally to get them.
So I'll
To sign up, yada, yada, yada.
For me, is I was never invited to do this. So let me explain how this office hours thing works going forward. So last Thursday was our last Thursday evening class until we start doing rehearsals of open pitch time. Instead, we will have office hours, usually on a Thursday or a Friday, that you will be able to schedule in the shared folder your time. If you want 30 minutes of our time to talk about whatever's holding you up in your process, like maybe your experiment's not running right, or you're stuck on your market research, or you're having trouble with a hook, or you need advice on the pitch, or whatever, right? So things that are moving you towards being ready to present is the focus. But everything that we've done should be building to your presentation, so it kind of is all over the
There's
place.
still Tuesday classes.
There's still Tuesday classes, and there's still Saturday classes.
Right.
The office hours for me will be Thursday mornings from 9 to noon, and then again from 1 to 2. I like to take a lunch break. But for the next 2 Thursdays, I'll be in Puerto Rico. So
Wait, say that again. The Thursdays for you will be what?
9 a.m. to noon, and then again from 1 to 2. So there'll be half-hour blocks in there. Yep, we're going to get an email and a document.
Okay.
Justin's were to be determined based on his crazy CEO schedule.
Is there anybody here that's like, there's no way I can make it during the day at all, ever,
For
like an office hours?
Oh, no.
What'd you say, Courtney?
Is there anybody who can never make it during the day?
Is there anyone that,
We're gonna
like,
ship
I
you off
cannot
Friday.
make it on a Thursday or Friday during the day, ever? No? Okay, good.
Well, if you can do a conference call, you can do a video chat, like there's a bunch of ways.
We have to make time as our job.
That's right. But, so the reason that we do that is that everybody needs kind of individualized stuff to get to the next stage here. So that the shift, and Justin's going to take over, the shift at this point, at week 5, we're going to week 6, is really kind of 3 things. 1, we move into the office hour phase. 2, we move into prepping for our final presentation, because it takes 2 or 3 weeks to get this done right with practice. And 3, we start taking everything you've learned, all the data you have your experimentation, and we start building what your corporate goals are for when the program is over. What are the next steps? I'm going to hit this by this date. I'm going to do this by this date. I'm going to test this. I'm going to launch that, right? I know you have equipment issues. That's okay. We're going to just be a draft.
So should we be coming in every Thursday for office hours?
If you want to.
Okay.
It is up to you where you feel you're at. If people don't need the time, they don't take the time. If you want the time, take the time. It is an opportunity to get free consulting, which is great.
Yeah, so how much time can we have? Only 30 minutes?
I try to do 30 minutes until I've got everything booked, because what happens is there's 12 people.
Right.
I've got 4 hours. I've only got room for 8 people in any given Thursday.
Okay.
Do you have that little automated calendar thing set up?
It's going to be a spreadsheet, I'm sure. I'll set that up. So other questions about that? All right. So there's a corporate goal setting. I think there's a worksheet in your book, in your binder. There's a corporate goal setting. So the point of that is, what am I doing the first month I'm out of the program? Because you're going to get done, you'll be like, wow, that was great. I'm so glad we finished that. The party was great, blah, blah, blah. And then the Tuesday's going to roll on. You're going to feel like, where are my people? Like I've been doing this for 9 weeks. I've built this habit. So we will have follow-up meetings we can set with all of you. If you want to do a part of the alumni program, you're always welcome to come and sit in on things. But more importantly, we try to create a structure where you can set some deadlines and share them and have some pure accountability, right? I'm going to try to get, I saw your first sit-down dinner thing. Is that one of the first ones you've done, or the one that I shared, right?
Yeah, it's one of the first.
Looks very exciting. I won't be here for it, but I shared the crap out of it. Share. Because it's moving forward with your experimentation. So we want to have follow-up from a peer group, and you need to start setting those goals now. We'll start getting the habit of probably on Tuesday talking about what goals you're hitting every week as well. Okay. Cool. Justin's going to wow you, and you get to rip him.
Yeah, rip.
Rip.
So based on what we just talked about, I want to go through the as I'm going through learn. All right, here we go. So this is outdoor activities. Wow. This is in fact, there's a $4 billion a year every year. Population. Lost salaries. In wage in the economic diversity. And they go like expect to leave town, either what 82% expect to not stay in Tucson. Now the numbers end up staying a little bit higher than that, but this is their intention as they're during their senior year. So what we end up with is a university that's a huge magnet. It brings in talent from all over the world. It actually generates companies and it generates educated workforce, and they leave and go throughout the country. So there's this interesting mechanism. Recognize that this cycle, exactly, the talent does go where there are jobs. But the truth is, talent actually goes where there's opportunity, and a lot of times, opportunity is seen as jobs, right? They're not the same thing, though. They are functionally different things. And so once you recognize that opportunity and jobs are different, it starts to unlock something. So the Kauffman Foundation identified in 2013 that 100% of all net new jobs created in the U.S. in the last high growth. That number seems insane, unbelievable, and not true, right? Until you start unpacking this and you realize that large companies were always small companies to begin with, right? And they grew rapidly and grew into large companies. The other pieces of this that make it uncertain are that you would think that large companies established today are the base of this, but they don't grow, right? Like they actually choose to implement automation to reduce labor because labor is expensive, and automation, when implemented, is implemented because it's cheaper. And then there's lifestyle businesses, 1 and 2 and 3 and 5 and 10 person companies who seek to exist simply for the purpose of being 1 or 2 or 5 or 10. They don't grow. That's not their goal. And so when you peel off all these, you realize that that's literally exactly true. That's what happens. Large companies become small, all the jobs are created there. That it's these sorts of businesses that are a critical element of driving growth, economic growth in your community. So, with Startup Tucson, we started to recognize that startups actually are the thing that create opportunity. They're the thing that is the missing mechanism in this to break this cycle. And so we asked ourselves, and actually back in 2011, as part of figuring out what we do with Startup Tucson, we tried to answer these questions. How do we keep and grow talent in Tucson? How do we support finding and growing more companies? And how do we use those questions to drive economic growth in Tucson? So what's unique about the way we approach Startup Tucson is that historically, our community and many other communities have focused on identifying resources to help companies grow. Right? Specifically, here's what the company needs, let's give it to that company. What we've also done that's new and different than the last 30 years and different than what other communities have done in the past is we are also looking at identifying and implementing resources to grow the community around the entrepreneur. And there's a reason for that. If you put those two things together, you're not just growing an individual company to achieve success, you're building an entire ecosystem. And when you think of it that way, you're actually building in a feedback loop that makes it easier to launch and build the next company. Because the creative teams are part of the community, they're inspiring each other, they're making connections. And as a community, we have not invested in the ecosystem component, which would mean investing in building connections within the community. So this entire approach is actually encapsulated in a thing called the Boulder thesis. It's something that we've begun implementing in the last 4 years, driven by Boulder, Colorado. And it looks like this, that if you're going to affect the overall ecosystem and change in it, the work you do needs to be led by entrepreneurs. You need to have a vision of 20 years, and you need to implement that 20-year time frame, extending it a day every day. So you're not saying we're in year 5 of a 20-year plan. We're in year 1 of a new 20-year plan. Every day, you're looking 20 years out. That what you build and do is inclusive of everybody. Doesn't matter what gender you are, it doesn't matter what race you are, but it also doesn't matter how what your aspirations are yet, right? That we don't know the difference between an entrepreneur who's working on their first thing and it looks like a restaurant. We want to identify those same people and help them understand what scalability and impact and long-term thinking looks like when you take a long-term impact on their potential as well. And then you want to engage the entire entrepreneurial stack. So that means that throughout the life cycle of a startup or a business, that you're not just focused on one step or another. It's not just about tech. It's not just about retail. It's not just about the early stage or the middle stage. It's everything. And so to give an example of this model of the difference between working on companies and working on community, we talk about Thryve, the program that you're all in here today, is clearly a venture development program, right? We have elements of community that are part of it. But the space that we're in here is an example of the community. Other examples are startup drinks, the fact that we run programs that we invite people into. Your demo day itself is an example of community, which is a little more community and a little less companies, but that's the purpose, right? So in 2014, I put together this model to help explain this concept to the city of Tucson as part of an award that we were applying for. And it helped me to understand what it is that we're trying to do with Startup Tucson. So we actually put together this pipeline concept that says, what are the programming that helps you at the idea stage? What sort of programming helps you at the innovation stage, at an incubation stage, the investment stage, and the impact stage? So we call it the idea to impact pipeline. And it's a framework both to help me understand what programming we should be thinking about as we're developing it, but also others as well. But also it follows the same model as a company, right? A company moves through this as well. So we think of our ecosystem as something the company moves through, not just something that the company does all on its own. As a result of that sort of work and some other things, we were written up in Entrepreneur Magazine as an emerging city for entrepreneurship. And specifically, they mentioned the pipeline program and Startup Tucson is part of the reasons for that. So this was actually a presentation I gave to a different audience. It was on Thursday before I went to Startup Week. But so I'll just end it there and open it up to any questions that anybody has. So anyway, that was my presentation. So let's hear some feedback.
How long has the program been going?
That's not the kind of feedback I want.
Okay.
You're talking about your presentation?
Your presentation.
Yeah.
Just now?
Yeah. I mean, we can have a whole conversation on
okay,
that.
gotcha. Yep.
Okay, so, well, my first thing is that you did a lot of pointing at your slides.
Okay.
And Ashley was like, the slides should be sort of in the background, like you just have the stuff. So you don't necessarily have to change it. It wasn't bad, but that's not what he was saying to do.
What's the goal of the presentation?
So I get asked a lot, what is Startup Tucson doing? And so my personal goal is to obtain buy-in to this piece.
So
right, that everybody kind of gets helping companies to a degree, and we've been doing that a lot. And a lot of people a lot of people don't want anybody to help, just go live and die, do your own thing. But But the vision, the whole kind of holistic concept, and particularly, I guess maybe it's best represented by answering this slide, that this is the why we do it.
So do you want feedback on slides?
Sure. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
But what this is for you guys to be critical on that side.
Right.
You know, I want the input in particular, but I also really want this to be an exercise in you guys owning the things you're learning.
Again, buy-in of whoever you're presenting to, but what would that look like?
So examples of that could be that we've now got someone who's willing to donate or invest in Startup Tucson, like money. It could be that we want someone to champion the cause. It could be that we want them to spend time working with you guys as mentors. Right? It could be that I want them to spend time working with me as mentor.
And what's the audience usually look like?
In this particular presentation's audience was SAL, Southern Arizona Leadership. So this was given to the president of Raytheon, the president of SALC, former president of Ventana Medical Systems. I give it at breakfast clubs and business executives typically.
Just based on all that stuff you said, although they're all structured as nonprofits, correct?
Those groups?
All the Thryve.
Everything is a C3 nonprofit. It's all Startup Tucson.
You might mention that somewhere in there.
One slide I did, it didn't get saved. I had it on here at one point. It's a good point.
Because that, then.
Then you're advancing that.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And I know Amanda had her hand up a bunch, but my thought is that I thought the pictures of the real estate were really good, the contrast, but you're really talking a lot about the people of Tucson. And so I think either the real estate with people or those community slides showing, because what people in Tucson look like.
There's no faces.
There's no
only
faces
face.
of Tucson.
Yeah.
And the people, so I know native Tucsonans where they were the first person in their family to go to college.
Okay.
And what that person looked like relative to their family, and it's sad, it's a very different look. How they dressed, how they carried themselves. And then the other piece is you've been doing it for a couple of years now. Where's your success rate? Where's your feedback of what you've already accomplished?
So I took it out in order to shorten it, but I meant to rearrange it so I could give it to you. I have slides at other portions of it that I would have presented in a longer presentation. So here's a story from Startup Weekend. They're building, they're now 20 employees.
So you've got that in there.
This is a whole other mechanism that I'm about.
So the traction that's effective and that it's actually getting that result.
Yep.
And then last but not least, and then I'll shut up.
This presentation, I was given 5 minutes to give.
Right.
So
in the very, very beginning, we talked about the economic impact, the $4 million, $4 billion, or not the economic impact, but you didn't say for whom. So, but I think you meant for the city of Tucson, but you did say it, yeah. Did you say city?
I implied it.
I think it's implied.
Yeah.
You think it's implied? Okay, because I think that there's I don't know, it depends on who you're talking to, but what it means for each individual family's economic impact that translates into this larger, what's good for the city impact.
Yeah, I could have improved that, and I realized as I was giving it that there's a transition that I needed to.
Something that might be interesting too is just put a number on, there's 4,000 people graduating with finance degrees every year that are moving away from, put it like an actual perspective on what are the jobs that are leaving the city, rather than just saying it's jobs and people that are experienced. Like there's finance, there's programmers, there's a
version of this that I have that talks about where there's a couple of extra slides in there that walk through what I stumbled through because I forgot to include it, which was here's the formula for getting to this number.
Mm-hmm.
And that formula is $16,000 a year difference between having a bachelor's and not, times 80,000 people who are in the workforce. In this percentage is the 25%. It's a little complicated to get there.
Yeah.
So that's why I've taken it out, but it's convoluted even.
Makes sense, like what you did with the Disneyland. That's how people have that cell phones in Disneyland Park.
The infographic.
Yeah, like whereas like $4 billion, what does it translate? How do you see it visually? What does it need to be?
Yeah. Okay.
I felt like you spoke too fast.
I agree.
Like we've heard you speak quite a bit and you seem to rush through that. Maybe you pressed for time.
I was trying to do it in the same amount of time I was before, but yeah, and I'm a little pressed for time. I'm always pressed for time. I probably could use the feedback, and there probably is also an explanation.
I clearly understood your message. I related with your enthusiasm. I was waiting for the success stories line.
Yeah.
But other than that, I got it.
I moved it because I ended it into 5, and I knew that if I did
But
that.
other than that, it was clear. Well, it was clear to me.
Well, and I loved the slide about how many people are leaving.
Yeah.
And if you, depending on who your audience is, because I know I struggle with this, a few years back before downtown got slightly better, and because I grew up in Chicago, I was like, I'm not really ready to live in a retirement community. I'm too young for this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like the 30 to 40 age, or even 30 to 50 for that matter, is like non-existent in this town unless you are in very certain specific fields. You know what I mean? So depending on who your audience is in terms of grooming people and wanting families here and other various things, there could be something you could add potentially depending on who the audience is.
Okay.
Too much retirement.
With the 18%, I know it's a little bit higher actual, but how much is it realistically can it get to? You have 70%, 74% San Francisco, as far as what it brings is people come from all different areas. So how much is it realistic that Arizona, U of A could keep? Because they're coming from different areas.
I don't know the answer to that systematically. The answer though is that wherever they're drawn from, we should be able to get to this.
46.
This is very common.
Okay.
Which is the baseline thing that we're talking about is different. This 40% is different than this 18%. It's just apples and oranges numbers.
Yeah.
Like if we turn this up to 40%,
what does that translate to?
You're going to have other people coming from out of town for the same reasons they're staying, right? So these are kind of apples and oranges.
Well,
They're correlated.
That made me think too, which I don't know if it's an intended outcome or not, but is your program designed to try to get more people to go to college, or try to get the people? So your program is trying to get people who are in college to stay and build business here.
So what it's trying to do is identify those people and educate and retain those people who will build this slice of the pie.
Right.
And there's a variety of things that go into this. There's the entrepreneurial lead,
right?
The person who's going to build and found the company. There's the talent they need to grow.
Right.
Those are going to follow as they exist. So it's a. I mean, this is not a simple story to tell.
No.
But that's at the end of the day. That's the piece right there that we are trying to focus on, is that audience.
And how do we get more people to go to college? So that there's a talent pool for these people.
So that's not part of this at all.
Right, I know.
That might be part of the equation of fixing it, but it's beyond the scope.
One thing that I think is that you're talking about everything you do, Thryve, Startup Tucson, idea funding, whereas it might be, depending on the audience and the buy-in you want, you might just focus on one of those and how that helps rather than like the whole package.
Yeah, in this case, that's kind of what I ended up doing, is this slide.
Oh, okay.
That was brand new for this presentation because all of these slides are actually pretty new. You noticed that I didn't mention any of the stuff down here.
Right.
Just sort of alluded to it and talked about the framework.
So I would just brand it then like a full Thryve presentation with maybe a very minimal mention of Startup Tucson, idea funding, and just focus on Thryve. Likewise for all the other ones.
Well, that is exactly the opposite of the intention of this presentation, which is to explain the value of adding this to the entire puzzle. If I were just focused on Thryve is represented as just a company piece. So what you're asking is, if you're saying it still felt convoluted.
Well, if your goal is to get buy-in, I think it might set, there's a lot to, like, where do I buy in? You know what I mean? Like, what do I want to jump into? And
okay.
It's just I'm kind of thinking out
The
loud.
ask never comes out.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, is what was the call to action at the end? I might have missed it, or you might, because we stopped, I think, halfway or wherever, you know, it didn't go through the full presentation, but I just want to know, what was your call to action?
No, you're right.
at the end?
In this one, it's not even in. And in some cases, no, you're right. I mean, in fact, it's probably not in a lot of them. It comes out usually in the Q&A, but it should be in there explicitly.
Okay, yeah.
My last little piece of feedback is just the Boulder thesis slide, the adding one more day thing. I just thought that was really kind of confusing for me.
Adding what?
The next slide, the one with so the having a long-term commitment, like
the way I talked about that.
Yeah, I didn't get that at all.
And really, what all I needed to do was avoid all of that and just say, you need to take it out long-term out. I gave particulars that don't really matter.
I put the 20 years in there and then just leave the long-term commitment scares many people, including me, but 20 years or whatever, 20-year view or 20-year. Yes?
It's not a company pitch. It's a company pitch.
The Boulder thesis, maybe you could talk, you don't know what that means by what that says, or maybe you talk about what they went from here to here, like, and that's what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, what I didn't give it is an example of what happened in Boulder.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good point. I think I should have said it on this slide.
Yeah.
Because
they went from, so the story is that there's one of my founding board members, Harry George, is a venture capitalist from Boston, moved out here, started a fund, brought $80 million to Tucson. His friend from Boston left Boston about the same time and went to Boulder. His name is Brad Feld. Brad Feld is the inventor of the Boulder thesis. The impact that Brad's work had in Boulder, much smaller community, turned out to be much more diverse than Harry's impact had on Tucson, in part because Brad's model involved building community along the way over 20 years, whereas Harry's was focused explicitly on building these companies in my portfolio.
Right.
One more thing, maybe I'm totally off here, but you paint.
But I also don't want to throw my board member under the bus publicly.
You paint a good picture of the pain that Tucson's facing, but I don't know if you paint enough picture of the pain that you might be facing, a shortage of funds or whatever.
Oh, that goes to the ask. Yeah. Good point. All right.
Cool.
Awesome.
I have a slightly better understanding now of what
we do.
What we do.
Yeah. I should give this at the beginning of every cohort. Turn you all into advocates. All right,
Well,
we'll do that.
Yeah, it would be good because I was. So I have a question. When you guys advertise the whole $10,000 worth of education or whatever, is that per cohort or per individual company?
Per company.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
That's what I thought it was. I just want to make sure I wasn't misquoting.
That was an estimate one of the other cities developed based on their work. So we just.
Well, and because I think that's a really valuable number, and I don't know if, once again, back to that whole the Thryve component, or like how you're investing the dollars that you're getting into these. I don't know if that's something that would be useful or not for this, but for me, it was like, wow, 10,000, because I thought of that directly for my company, and for me, what I'm receiving from this, which is a huge value. And at one point, I was like, wait a minute, is that 10,000 for everybody in the total, for everybody in the room? I questioned that. I didn't really actually know the answer. That's why.
Yeah, it's estimated that the value of the program is about 10,000.
Right. Investment equates to that return.
Yes.
Huge.
No, that's a good idea.
Because your return is
telling
really
the story
big
of the
then.
ROI.
Yeah, that's a really big return if that first one was like 400, whatever that was slide said.
Cool. All right. We're going to see if Tony. So we have another event starting at 1, but it starts up there, and they won't come down here until about 1:15 or 1:20. So you guys are. One more thing.
I know he wanted results to fill out his survey while we were here. He threatened to make us stay and fill that out.
Too girly? Any little Sterner, more Sterner, excuse me.
No, I got like one. So, there's a survey.
I need to do.
Everybody get it? Everybody get the survey? Email survey from Tony?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The one that
Need
works?
to fill it out?
Yeah, everybody needs to fill it out. Yep.
He wants us to do that now before we leave. See it in it.
Anybody who can,
Susan.
please do. Yeah. You bet.
Have a great week.
Oh, I know, did he send this?
He sent it a while ago, and then he sent like an updated version that works.
Yeah, it was like a couple days ago.
Yeah, it's like.
Oh, it is the entire reason why
Early
to retire. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Have a great day.
I got what you.
Oh,
Before, I've
okay.
never quite been able to get what you do, what you said today, like.
Oh, those are. It's like, I kind of, my business is completely evolved and I actually had to branch out because I started doing more and more and more for my clients. I started doing one thing and then it was like, oh, you're gonna do this and then you're gonna do this and then you're gonna do this and then all of a sudden before you know it, it's like we're taking over everything.
I couldn't do anything. I
Because
couldn't get on the
we're more
table.
efficient than hiring people who
What's up with
fire
that?
or steal from them or who, I mean, God only knows what, it's ridiculous.
Oh, goodness gracious. All right, then, in that case.
Right, and some people get it and some people don't, but there's so many different, the problem is I don't have one type of business I work with. So it's like what I do for a service company that cleans floors is different than what I do for a company that's manufacturing. It's also different from a company that's a consultant, an accounting firm, an attorney. So it's like, it's so variable. What I do is so fucking variable. And so there's not one thing that I do. That's been my challenge this whole time. That's why I keep changing gears.
That's why I thought that was literally, it's like, I'm right.
I finally figured, you know, it's different for everybody.
The simple examples at least help me.
Cool, thank you. That's awesome.
Are you gonna venture into the non-dairy ice cream market?
We need to.
Because someone like me who can't eat ice cream but loves it.
We do some sorbet.
You said that. I find sorbets often really sweet.
Because it's sugar.
Right, exactly. That's why I was like the whole soy or.
Because sometimes people will be like, oh, I'll get the sorbet because of the calories. It's like.
It's straight sugar.
There's no fat, but it is all sugar.
Right, exactly. So. But I wasn't sure how.
Yeah, we haven't done anything yet with like coconut milk. And so.
Almond, soy, whatever,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, it's so much more readily available today than it has been,
Yeah.
you know.
So, I mean, we need to, but it's almost a whole nother category.
It
You
is.
know, there's companies that's all they do.
Right, yeah, you're competing with
You know,
so,
it's funny, like there's a company called the Cashew Cow.
right, I'm familiar with them. Mhm.
And we actually haven't gone there.
Mhm.
And they're nice people and I met with them and I supported them on Facebook and stuff. But my one daughter's totally allergic to cashews, so.
Right.
But it's funny because they're a niche.
Yeah,
You
they
know,
are.
I think they probably have an audience that, it's a small audience, but if you're totally allergic to dairy, it's
Right.
where you're gonna go.
Exactly.
But I also think, you know, sometimes the niches are good and bad at the same time.
Right, exactly. Well, I totally get it. That's why I was just curious if that was even part of your, you know, part of your.
We haven't
direction.
yet, you know,
Yeah.
usually, it's funny, it's usually when like a restaurant or somebody will request something and then we do it. You know,
Right.
and then-
Are you guys familiar with this place?
Mhm. Are you have an event starting at like 1 o'clock or something? Is that?
No, I'm asking because I'm not familiar with this place at all.
Oh, okay.
I'm not totally familiar with it.
Well, it's a kind of a communal rental for people to run businesses out of here and that sort of thing. And then it's also a meeting space and some other things. What do you? Just in general?
Work on the computer.
Oh, these I think these are people's businesses and their workstations. So let me introduce you to somebody who can help you, okay?
All right.
Oh, Tony, this gentleman is with that's what I told him.
Hey, Maggie, Louis. Yeah. Yeah, I'm here. I was wondering if, like, what computers are available for the public to use, or? No, really, just bring your own laptops. Yeah. These are all old processing systems and some of the graphics people use. Yeah. I didn't know we were supposed to bring our own laptop. So you guys are probably down here, right? Sounds all right. Tony, when are you going to Puerto Rico? I am on a Wednesday. Wednesday. You want to talk complicated public speaking? You ready for this? Complicated. I'm listening. 2-hour meeting. Yeah. The entire tourism board. The Secretary of Economic Development for the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico.
Oh, so he's going to be there. I know you said you know.
He's going to be there.
Great. That's great.
Senor Paco.
Senor Paco.
Secretary Paco. Meeting. Wait. The secretary? Why isn't the secretary? Oh, you're competing with the current agency. Yeah. The other marketing agency that already has.
Okay. I thought you were saying competing with.
They're sitting in the meeting.
That's so fascinating.
Okay. Multicultural. So.
Oh yes.
Latin America,
yes.
then it's more formal. It's more structured. There's more family oriented. There's no humor.
Latin America is more formal.
Oh yeah. For
Really?
business.
For business. Okay. Because I've heard.
She's the whole deal, right? Business. Yeah. Right?
I heard them. So when we went to Brazil, they were like, you have to at least spend time at the beginning, just like greeting people, and like talk about their families and stuff.
So
but then the actual meeting part is more fun.
Yeah, I go in and I talk about my family, and we talk about.
Yeah.
I don't start talking about business. I mean, just sit there and not talk business for as long as it takes.
It might be like 30 minutes. It might
be 40 minutes into a 2-hour meeting. I don't know.
That's so interesting.
Right?
That's so interesting.
It's just $500,000 to $5 million contract. Whatever.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So this is now testing all of my multicultural MBA experience and all of my public speaking experience. I've worked the deck like 10 times. We've cut it from 40 slides to 20. I got to work it 5 more times today with 2 Puerto Rican cultural people from Puerto Rico who are going to be hearing me today. So I'm prepping, right?
Yeah. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Have a great time.
Yeah. Well,
I would love to hear about it.
When I finish, so I fly down on Wednesday. We have the meeting. I fly down Thursday. We have the meeting on Friday.
Yeah.
Then I got the rest of the week to hug out. So,
Nice. He's going to Puerto Rico to pitch. Essentially, is not essentially. This is a very dumbed down version.
Yeah.
Startup culture.
Hey, Tony, what's next?
Specifically,
when am I going? Wednesday.
Technology startups.
Cool.
Listening to us.
Yeah, this is Jerome. Jerome, I think we're done on our end, man.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey. Jerome's from Flagstaff. He's in the Harvard Accelerator.
Awesome.
So I'm pitching virtual reality, branded storytelling, viral video marketing for tourism. That's the first half of the pitch, right? All right, man. You got anything you need, Jerome? You need anything from me?
I don't know if we're.
I think we're good to go.
All right, man. Be working your slides, and I'll talk to you after I get back. Well, I'll be in Tuesday.
Enjoy, man. Thanks.
All right. Take care, brother.
Bye.
So is the camera wiping off?